So
Pick 'em up.
Is that a
Stick 'em
banana
up.
in your pocket, or are you just happy to see We made it.
Yeah, I have the deer in the headlights look because I'm just like not convinced that any of this stuff is gonna work. I think that's what's going on with me. How's it going, everybody? Oh, look, we have wonderful comments already. People showing up, our friends. An electrolytic martini?
God, what a great idea. We should have named the show that.
That's right.
Electrolytic Martini. It's really funny. When I was a kid, a friend of mine and I who was also an electronics geek.
Yeah.
We were about 10. And I discovered that when you take a 9-volt battery and connect wires to it and run those wires into the glass,
Oh, yeah.
they would make bubbles, right? And so we came up with 9.5-volt soda, where we take the 9-volt battery and run the wires into the water and let it sit there and bubble for a half an hour and then drink it.
And was it actually, by the time you drank it, was it different?
Well, we thought it was going to be like carbonated
There's no
water,
carbonated,
but no, it totally failed.
You just...
It tasted like battery. I didn't dilute it in water.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Which is why I am the way I am today.
Wow. Yeah, I used to try and do things like that when I was around 10 too, and none of them worked.
And the reason it was 9.5-volt soda is because I had a voltmeter, and so we could. I built one from a kit. It was an ICO voltmeter. I built it from a kit that I got for Christmas, and I tested the battery, and it was It was a Rayovac, a red Rayovac with a cat going through the 9. And it was 9.5 volts. And I went, oh, it's a 9. They call it a 9-volt battery, but it's actually 9.5. I wonder why they do that.
Yeah, I wonder if it has anything to do with that cat jumping through the 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was the extra life. The battery had 9.
Exactly. That. Yeah, I know. But that's interesting. I didn't build one, but I had one as well. It was a Tandy or Radio Shack or whatever.
You know, Joe, you've been holding out on me, actually. You actually know and have had your fingers in this stuff more than you've sort of let on in the past.
Now, why
you kind
do
of
you
played,
think that?
you sort of kind of played Virgin, played Amp dumb, Country dumb.
Totally dumb.
But when you were over at the shop and we were going to this stuff, you were asking all these really pointed questions.
Oh.
And I remember when I tried doing this, and you talked about bias, and you talked about this and that, and I'm like, you know what? It just occurred to me because we've had all these conversations, and we're just like running at the mouth, and
You started going, wait a minute.
wait, just a minute.
Those questions you're asking.
They're just a little too informed.
Except the thing is I really, really am not informed. I was that pinhead who I make fun of, who had the Kendrick books that would just kind of tell you to, unsolder that and it'll sound like this. And then, change your 6V6s to 6L6s, throw a solid state rectifier in your deluxe, and then you'll have more headroom, and okay, I'll try all this stuff. And I didn't learn the underlying anything about it.
You just knew the keywords.
I just knew some of the keywords,
some of the language.
Yeah, but that's when I was like 21, 22, and now that I'm a little older, I actually want to know what it actually is. So it's a treat to go through that stuff with.
But you were tying things together, like when I would do a thing and you go, okay, stop for a second. Does that mean? And you hit it right on the head every time.
That's funny because when I would ask some of those questions, I would think, oh, some of our guys, who would watch those videos are probably going to go, you dumbass. Like, this is so kindergarten, like the questions that I would ask. But I don't know, maybe they're not.
They're not at all. They're not at all.
All right. Well, hopefully they're helpful to the people who want to learn more, who know like as much as I do, which is not much.
Anyway, hey friends, thanks for coming and hanging out with us. This is the Martini and Cap Reform show, and it's going to be heavily weighted on the martinis. All right. Why martinis? No particular reason. It's just like,
Actually, there is a particular reason though.
Well,
but it started a few weeks ago.
Yeah, but the tequila and bourbon sort of conversation was getting tired, and I felt like we could talk about margaritas again another day, and we've got a lot of variations to try.
Yeah.
And I did buy a really cool tequila this weekend that I hadn't seen before, and so I can hardly wait to try that out. But it's not going to be today. But I know what I was thinking of when the martini thing came up, and it was because of MASH.
I thought it was because you guys went out to this martini bar.
Well, we went out to the martini bar to get sort of schooled on martinis. But what drove it was every episode of MASH or every other episode of MASH, Hawkeye and Pierce.
I don't.
They'd go to the
Klinger.
They'd go to the bar. They'd go to the enlisted men's club, and the Alan Alda's character.
Yeah.
That forget which one was Hawkeye and which one was. He always ordered a martini dry as the desert.
Okay.
And
is that what he said?
And I didn't. Yeah, dry as the something or other. He always had some, and I never really knew what that meant.
What does that mean?
And well,
I don't know.
Just the right way to make a martini is just like it's going to be mostly gin. You just want a hint of the aromatic part of it. It just needs to be a hint, and not something that you necessarily drink or taste. Just something that hits the nose. And
that's why we have the massive top of the martini glass.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get the classic V shape. Cheers, guys.
Now,
so, and when I was a little kid, when I was like 5, 6, 7, and whenever we had a
So how was it?
I like this.
Okay.
I got a little bit of Christmas tree going on here.
Nico-chan, you hit it out of the park as usual. Every New Year's Eve.
Good.
Very good.
Fantastic.
Cheers, darling.
So this round of martinis is courtesy of bartender Nico-chan, who slays. And actually, she did a little studying and she found the recipes of some world champion.
Number 2. Not the number 1.
The number 2 world champion martini, the bartender martini bartender contest, her martini recipe.
Yeah, World Bartender Competition.
Yeah, World Bartender Competition.
Oh.
So
that's what we're drinking.
So we got into a little bit of background in how to do it and how to do it right before we drag you guys into our madness here.
The last
But
time
I just remember that when I woke up on New Year's Day as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, the living room was trashed. The ashtrays were filled with cigarette butts. There's all these empty glasses. And that the next time I smelled gin, it always reminded me of that. This great memories of New Year's Eve and my parents having a great time with the neighbors, and they're all crashed out, and I'm up at 8 o'clock in the morning looking at the hats. Oh, there's a hat. I'll try on the hat. And what's that interesting smell and all that. But you said that there was another impetus behind this that I seem to have forgotten about or glossed over.
I thought it was that you went to that martini bar and you were sampling probably different recipes, probably not classic stuff, I'm assuming. And then you thought, hey, we're going to go down that road. And when you told me about doing that on the show, I thought, yeah, I'm game, because this is actually funny to say out loud. I think this is the second martini I've had in my life.
This would probably be the second I had.
Oh, really? And the first one I had, this was probably 10 years ago. And my mom used to drink martinis. And I asked her to make me one. And she did. And this is I was kind of a teetotaler for most of my life. I got really into Scotch about 5-6 years ago. So 10 years ago, I had no experience with, spirits. It's like I would drink beer, right, occasionally. So then a martini, it was just like, what? The same thing that people normally do when I have them try Scotch, It's like, get this shit away from me, I couldn't taste nuance. It just tasted like, jet fuel or something. But now, I'm really enjoying this.
Well, the trip to the bar was motivated by having all these thoughts and trying to pull them together and like, okay, so how do we get up in time for the next show? How do we get up to speed on martinis? There's a great little bar in Studio City called Black Market, and they've got a great bar. It's a great atmosphere, a great vibe, a big long bar, and they make their own potato chips, which are to die for. And so little snacks, a little sort of tapas kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they have a good selection of the different kinds of alcohol for every kind of drink. They got a great selection of Scotch and whiskey, bourbon, and tequilas. They got all the great tequilas.
Cheers!
All right, Nico-chan, cheers.
Yay! Cheers!
So I figured that would be a good place to go. So we walked in there on a Sunday afternoon. And bartender goes, what can I do for you? I said, you can school me on martinis. And he didn't give me this, what are you trying to steal my secrets or any kind of crap like that. He was just like, all right. Pulls out a couple of bottles. Okay, so here was what he just went right into it.
Oh, cool.
He'd been waiting for years for somebody to ask him
Amanda.
About knowledge. Somebody wants something from me. I can be the expert behind the bar. And he just threw himself into it. By the time we had a couple, 2, 3, and left there, we had a concept. And also, that was where I learned that I had fallen in love with Roku gin. Now, Roku is Japanese. It's another brand that was purchased by
Suntory.
For the relaxing times. Suntory.
They own almost everything. They own half of everything.
But and my mom is a martini freak, and she's I used to drink that Tanqueray, the stuff in the green bottle, but these days, it's just the regular old inexpensive stuff is fine for me too. And I said, yeah, I get all that, and we went all through that, but it just there was a lightness and a fragrance about the Roku, and so I read up on that a little bit, and there's a few reviews, and the reviewers, these expert alcohol reviewer guys,
expert alcoholics.
Yeah.
Man,
and they're all 2 or 3 of the more well-known reviewers are saying the same thing. They're saying it's not the greatest gin in the world, but for martinis and gimlets, it's just way above its weight class in every other respect.
Huh.
So if you're drinking it like gin and soda or neat or on the rocks or whatever, that's one thing. It's a little out of balance. It's a little this or that, yappity yap stuff I don't understand in one ear and out the other. But when they said, but exceptional for martinis and gimlets.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we got home, we went and we bought some stuff and came home, and then we went to the department stores and looked at different martini glasses, and I just had it in my mind. There was a particular size and a particular shape and a particular stem.
Well, the classic. I mean, isn't
so
this
we
the most classic?
We went everywhere.
Of course you did.
We went to Macy's. We went to Bloomingdale's. We went to Bevmo. We went to 9 different places and looked at every kind of martini glass that they had, and then I settled on it the right size. It had to be a certain size, certain diameter, the stem, a really delicate stem, and the ones that had the most delicate stems were crystal. But I wasn't going to buy any stupid $100 crystal martini glass.
It's interesting that there isn't what do I want to say? Like for Scotch, there's the Glencairn glass,
Uh-huh.
and they own it.
Yeah.
Like if you're an experienced Scotch drinker, you have Glencairn glasses. That there isn't that such a thing. Like, oh, you just go get an Esquire,
Yeah.
for martinis.
Yeah.
You kind of have to select it and decide,
Yeah.
what your style is going to be. There isn't the one go-to.
And the ones that are supposed to be the good ones, the good quality ones, the too big on the top, the stem is too stout. Some of them have got little shapes on the stem, little balls and little swirls and engraved on the sides and all this hoity-toity shishi crap. And I'm like, no, I want a martini glass just like the one that Hawkeye was drinking out of. And we went around and we found that they are a particular. There's the company Riedel that makes all kinds of different wine glasses and crystal, and they have several different series. And we found the series where everything fell into place. And they had them at Bloomingdale's, and the guy was just like, "Oh, there's the last pair," and stupid amount of money. And we just looked at that and went, the great thing about shopping is you just go, okay, let's see how much they are on Anaheim. Yeah, on Amazon, they're like $25 less a glass, right? So,
I kind of hate that.
well, but in the
I get it.
in the
I mean, I
in the
do it.
Westwood Bloomingdale's, everything is like $25
Yeah, you
more
don't
than
wanna
it's
be over
supposed to
there
be.
anyway.
And we just weren't going for it. So, and besides, I wanted 4 and they only had 2. So,
Scapegrace gin? Interesting. I've owned exactly one bottle of gin, and it was the St. George gin, and I got it because just sniffing the bottle smells like a Christmas tree.
nope, not at all surprising. It's what I do. You sussed that out, Mark. Thank you. That was high compliment. I appreciate that.
Just a dork.
That's what everything is about, isn't it? Isn't that what everything is about? Getting it just right?
Well, I think it goes deeper than that.
Oh, all right.
Or I'm just... I think it's that our prefrontal cortex never stops working, and we need something to put in the hamster wheel or we go mad. So
Yeah.
we just self-select the thing that we're going to go deep on, just because this thing has to keep going, right?
Yeah, the
So it's
Murphy
like,
complex.
yeah, so it's like, okay, this week it's martini paraphernalia. Okay, I'm going to go deep and I'm going to learn everything I can about this.
Murphy from Cuckoo's Nest, right? They had to
Jim, yeah, this is all new to me too.
they had to give him electroshock treatment to turn it off. Little dabble do, eh, Doc?
All right. Amanda,
Pregnant pause.
before we address what you just typed, don't go there yet. You have a question to answer for me. Let's see if you got this one. Got an answer for this one. Why the olives? What the hell is that about?
It's tradition mostly, but it has to be.
Changing the caps in your amp without checking them all is also kind of tradition.
Well, it's the olives. There's two of the most popular ways that martinis are done.
You can use Amanda's answer. if you
They're
want.
either with olive, or they're with a twist of
a
orange,
little rind.
a twist of orange peel.
Yeah.
And the olive is just a more of a bold flavor, and it's oily. And one of the things about a martini is you want the gin to coat your tongue, and the olives are marinated in oil so that when they come in a jar and
Yes.
they're marinated.
So when is it customary to actually eat the olives? At what point?
I
Anytime?
think you can eat them anytime.
Oh, okay.
Actually, you can eat one while you can chew on one, and it helps coat your tongue, and then you take the next sip of the martini, and it sort of slides over that, and it sort of accentuates the.
I haven't had these olives yet, but I'm just thinking about it, and actually, I think they really make sense together.
But mostly because that's what they did on Mad Men, and that's what they did on That's what Hawkeye did, so that's what I'm doing.
Braxton, I'm with you. It's really trying to point that prefrontal mechanism towards things that enhance your life. Unfortunately, things that enhance our life sometimes also drain the financial picture, right? And I think that's what you're addressing, maybe. At least
Yeah,
for me,
Amanda,
maybe.
extra dry. Absolutely.
No, wait a minute. What's... Okay, whoa, Amanda, hold on. What is dry again? Define dry.
Dry is like no embellishment of the flavor. It's mostly gin. It's almost all gin.
What is dirty?
Dirty is with the olive in it,
Okay.
I think. Not right?
Now, how do you say, like, okay, extra dry? How do you order it? Like, what's the what's 180 from dry? And do people order it that
Oh,
way?
if it's not super dry, it means usually it has more
Vermouth?
vermouth in it.
And
yeah.
then what do you call that?
Just a regular martini, not a dry martini or an extra dry martini.
But you know how coffee, you have all of these different levels?
Yeah, well, for example, a typical martini is
What
going to
if
be.
you want, like, I don't even know what vermouth tastes like on its own. What if you wanted, like, what? So, okay.
Here's some vermouth, and
me just
normally you're going to have.
What is this?
Normally you're going to have 6 parts gin to
That's dry. This is a sweet.
6 part gin to 1 part vermouth.
Okay.
So when it's extra dry, it's going to be less vermouth, and to the point where there's almost none. You wave the bottle over the top
is
of the
like-
glass.
But how
Balsamic.
What flavors wine actually?
Okay. Now, can I sniff this one? This is
Just use for the
fun.
Manhattan.
You know what this smells like? It smells like that stuff that we used to drink in high school out of a bottle.
Yeah, Amanda sings.
That was 99 cents a bottle. What was that stuff? Bubble or Fluffle or what was it called? It was this stuff that just made you.
This just has a balsamic character to it.
Yeah,
I should try it
Yeah.
solo.
yeah, but you wouldn't use sweet vermouth in a martini. But this is what.
What do you use that in? Manhattan?
Yeah, exactly. And my mom is a Manhattan freak.
I love Manhattans.
So and then there's a different kind of a. There's a cherry, maraschino cherry, but a special kind of maraschino cherry from Manhattan. We'll get into
Nigel, do it, man. Do it. Okay. so
Typical is
Nigel was
6
gonna
parts.
run to the
Yeah,
liquor
right.
Store.
6 parts, 1 part vermouth. That's right.
Tell Nigel exactly what you need to do this with us. The Roku gin.
Roku
right?
gin, and the Dolan vermouth is good. There's a variety of different vermouths.
And Stephen is saying that vermouth solo tastes horrible. I think
It does.
that's what you're saying.
It's,
okay.
it's undrinkable
All right. Oh, interesting.
to me, anyway.
All right.
And actually, a couple of reviews on the Roku I read were that it was this flavor content was its flavor balance was such that you could actually get the effect of the vermouth without having vermouth in it. And then now you're talking about a super dry martini where you just spritz up an orange peel over the top of it, and see, that's just about fragrance. Then that's just about the atmosphere over the top of the glass, but you're practically drinking straight gin, and
Which
thus,
I did that. Seriously, I got that bottle of St. George gin because there was so much. I know it's juniper, but to me it smelled like just straight up pine tree. Like it
Right.
was Christmas tree
well,
in a
the
bottle.
traditional gin, yeah,
And
it's
I
got
love
that
that.
juniper
I
thing.
love that.
The more modern gins have a little bit more of these sort of botanical little things. And you know what?
Yeah, St. George, I've had their
And you know what I'd
absinthe
like to
as
say
well.
about that? Fuck reforming caps. Let's just drink 17 martinis and just try every single thing, and we'll just talk about that for the whole show, because what the hell? Nobody wants to hear about this nonsense.
No, everybody wants to hear about caps.
This is recipe. I put
Right?
a little bit of orange bitter.
Now, in place of
All right, yeah, Mark, cool.
In-
This chat is on point.
in place
on.
in place of close, go close.
What is that?
Instead of putting
Orange bitters.
instead of twisting the orange peel over the drink.
Yes.
She just put a little splash.
Amanda, get on a plane and
Back a little
come
bit.
join
Back
us.
a little bit. Right.
We will
there.
drink lots of
And
martinis.
just stop, and it should focus.
And
on
bring that snake alcohol that you were telling us about.
When I was resetting the camera, I might have set it so that it's not in product mode, so it's not like zeroing in on that. But so, as usual, I got to screw up.
Vodka instead of gin. Vodka and a martini. Talk about that.
I don't know shit about a vodka martini.
Okay,
We only
I don't
talked
know
about
shit
the
about-
traditional. Maybe Amanda, we can have you on and you can school us about the intricacies of the different variations. I really only care about.
What is this?
Baba dear,
Oh,
favorite
from Poland.
vodka.
I really only care about the glass and the little poker that holds the olive, the shape.
What'd you get? What's on the end of yours? Oh, that's just that's cool.
What the hell is that?
I don't know, but I got a circle.
Oh,
Here's looking at you, kid.
oh. There was one that's got the little two sides of the shot glass on it. This might be the thing that smushes. I don't know what the hell it is. When I looked at them, I thought, we could play a game of Monopoly with these. That'd be great.
Or Clue.
Yeah, let's invent a variation of Monopoly called the Martini Monopoly.
I would love that. And you know
Experience.
what? I've had less than 1,000 calories today, so getting in on this, I'm already buzzed. I'm having a grand old time.
I was getting everything technically all set up to experiment and try some new things. Like this show, it's never going to be the same twice.
No.
Technologically, it's never going to be the same twice because
No.
we're always going to
Shotgun
try
mic.
different things to see if we can get it to sound a little better. This time, I grabbed one of those relatively new Rode shotgun mics. One of you guys suggested I look into So anybody says I don't listen, one of our
said
gang,
that?
one of our gang,
You listen, and then you go, no, fuck that.
yeah. Well, one of our gang suggested a shotgun mic, so I went out and looked into shotgun mics, and I asked a few people. One of the people that I ask a lot of questions to is Henning Pauly, because he's a freak about gear, about every kind of gear, especially cameras and mics and lights and all
I
that
started
kind of
life like that.
Yeah.
And then I ran into financial constraints.
Yeah.
And then that's when I said, fuck that.
Well, Henning has actually made a going concern about it. He's really great at it.
and
so.
his wife's involved. She's an editor, right?
She's
So
the-
It's like all in the family.
She's
Let's get it on.
She's the producer of the show. She's back there behind the scenes working all the switches
And
and
his
levers.
shit looks incredible.
Yeah,
man.
pretty amazing.
Yeah, they're a great team.
And his show is evolving too. So that's what I like about Henning is his thing is always evolving. He's always trying to get it to the next level and stuff. And so when I asked him about shotgun mics, he did to me what I do to anybody that asks
He did
about
with the bartender when you asked about
Yeah.
the martini. He's like, "Oh, you want to talk about shotgun
Yeah.
mics, huh?
Major download.
Let's go."
I tell you, if you want to make sure that you don't get Alzheimer's and you don't go senile, just keep jamming knowledge into your fucking cortex as long and as hard as you possibly can, and you'll always have an active mind, and you'll always be excited about life, and you'll always have something
Yes.
new to play with.
Yes, that's how it works.
That's how it works.
That's how
I
it
think.
works. Absolutely.
I mean, I keep thinking, where do I get all the energy to do all this stuff? And it's just, you just keep pounding it in there because you know what? Your brain has to absorb that stuff and digest it and parcel it all out and put this piece of knowledge in this hole over here and this piece of knowledge. All
your
of
brain
that,
wants that. It's craving that.
Yeah.
That's that whole prefrontal
what
cortex
makes your brain,
hamster wheel.
what develops your brain when you're born to the time that you die is new knowledge. That's what stimulates your brain to create more brain cells. More brain cells equals more memory. More memory equals more access to the stuff that you've learned that you can use going forward. And that brain activity keeps you thinking and feeling young. And when you think and feel young, it doesn't matter that you look like a broken down old fuck like I look. I still feel 18 and I'm like jumping in front of cars and flipping people off because they're honking at me, but it's my light, you know.
I have to say, man, I might have said it on the show before, but you and I have been friends for years now, but since we started doing the show, we're in contact throughout the week, every week.
Fucking annoying, isn't it?
No, it's great, man. You're my brother. But something that has really struck me is just how you have maintained your passion and interest for all of this shit. And it does not abate. And it has not abated one bit. My mind is in everything other than music these days. You know, like when I come hang out with you and I talk to you, like, oh yeah, remember that used to be my life? And I still love that sort of thing, but it's amazing to me that after all of this time that you haven't checked out. Like when I talk to you, you're like, have you read the new thing? Have you checked the new thing? Have you done the new thing? It's always, and I'm like, no, I haven't. I'm totally checked out on that stuff. And you are right there. And that's impressive and fun and actually inspiring to me.
That's survival mode for me. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. When the economy tanked, our company had two choices.
Yeah.
Go down
Yeah.
or not go down.
Yeah.
And the difference between going down and not going down is deciding that you're not going to go down.
Joe is Tubbs. I love you, man.
Who's Tubbs?
It's Miami Vice.
Oh,
Right? I think I'm remembering that right.
and it's basically a choice that you make. You see a boulder rolling down the hill at you, and you can just go while it rolls over you,
Yeah.
or you duck and roll,
Braxton 08.
and you figure out a way to live another day. And
So let me ask you this.
that
When that happened, did you ever have a moment where you were thinking, I'm going to wind up doing something other than, like, something outside of music? Like, have you ever considered that?
I'll tell you exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
We have this philosophy that you have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, and a plan D, and a plan E, and F and G and H.
Yeah.
You don't just have a plan A and plan B. You have as many effing plans as you need to compensate for the fact that the previous plan wasn't up to the task. And plan X was, all right, what do we have left? A bus bench and some newspaper, a couple of blankets, and a phone number of a relative that we can crash in their garage floor for a day. You know, the absolute worst case. What if everything is gone? What do you do then? Once you go all the way to the absolute worst case.
What's the worst thing that can happen?
What's the absolute worst? You know, and it's
really
the joke
think about
around
that.
here. The joke around here is like, there's two things we always say. You know, it's like the first one is, well, what's one gonna do? And the other one is, what's the worst that can happen? And anything above waking up in the winter on a bus bench is better than that. Anything one step above that is better than that. But even if you're at that point where you're waking up on a bus bench under newspapers, you woke up and you've got an opportunity to take the first step on the next journey. And if you don't look at it that way, that means you've given up. You've just let the world roll over you. And
Yeah.
and giving up is a thing that when life gets big enough to get on top of you and you feel like that you can't manage it any longer, it finally rolls over you and you just submit and you're gone.
I've seen that happen a lot.
And we've all seen that happen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And but knowing that it could potentially, in the worst case, be in front of you, at least gives you a fighting chance, because You're not blind and dumb to the
To
possibility.
me, I actually like it always lurking there. It's motivating to me.
It is
I actually
motivating.
like burning the bridges down. When I get things going and it's like, this is cool, I'm like, how can I kind of not ruin it so that other people are adversely affected, but like, okay, how can we tear this down and start over again so I can build it up again? Because I really enjoy that climb.
Well,
You know?
see,
And Amanda, I saw your thing on there. You were the originator of this thing. Who's Crockett and who's Tubbs? I didn't see it initially because I'm
Brandon.
buzzed, but
oh, Brandon, that's
Steve has
awesome.
better hair. I just don't have any hair.
Come on, check out Brandon. As long as you don't catch yourself drinking Michelob Ultra on the regular, you're still in the fight. That's so awesome,
Brother.
I mean, it's
We don't. You know what?
It's
kind of the
sideways, but
thing.
it's sideways, but it's true. It's you're the fight is over when you give up, and
just don't.
you just never give up.
No,
You
know,
never
I
give up.
remember. I think when I was like 20, I remember having this thought of like, you know what? If I was homeless, like I lived in Colorado at the time. It was like, you know what? If I was homeless, I would walk to Southern California or like some climate that was awesome, and at least I would be someplace nice while I was homeless. You know what I mean? Like you can
I
always
know exactly what I
upgrade
mean.
your
There's a
condition.
whole there's a whole a Sam Kinison bit about that. If you can't make it in Southern California, where the hell else on the planet are you
I
going to
wasn't
ever
even
make
talking
it?
about like trying to make it. I'm just like, if I was at the end of my rope, it's like, okay, I'm gonna hang out on the end of my rope, but what's a better place to hang the end of this rope? Like, if I was in Minneapolis and it was just freezing, nothing against Minneapolis, but if I was homeless in Minneapolis, I'd be like, okay, I'm homeless. Where's a better place to be homeless? Let me go
Okay.
do that. That sounds like fun. That sounds like adventure.
All right,
right?
I'm going to trip out a little harder and farther, and then we better reel it back in.
And talk about caps?
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat some olives. you
Yeah,
know?
eat some olives. In dream therapy, if you're having a dream, a nightmare, and say you're like staring into a spider web and a giant spider is about to wrap its legs around you and absorb you, and then you wake up, what you're doing is you're interrupting the process of the dream because you fear the outcome. And in dream therapy, they tell you to try to stay asleep and follow the dream through to its conclusion, regardless of how intense and scary it may seem. So you have to mentally train yourself before you go to sleep to not give in to not wake up and break the conclusion of the dream. And one example is you're stuck in a spider web and the spider is coming over you and about to envelop you, and that's the time that your adrenaline is pumping and you will wake up to get out of that dream, and you try to stay asleep. And then the spider wraps its tentacles around you and it's about to absorb you, and then you slip into another reality where you're out in the field with clover and birds, and you're in a whole new space because because that's all an illusion, and you just had to follow through and get past that point so that you could progress and get whatever was in your brain that was getting all locked up, that you need to discharge that energy. You need to get past that so you stop having that dream.
Okay. Well,
And life is kind of the same way.
so I'm going to say some
The
shit
worst
here.
possible thing that can happen in your life is when you don't know what to do next and you surrender, or you just sometimes just surrender, let the bus roll over you, and then you get up and go take a shower.
Without getting into details, like the last 2 years have been the most difficult years of my adult life. That's even including the 2 years that my parents passed away.
And
Like
you've been
the
going through some
amount-
changes.
Oh, in every possible way. But it's
And by the way, we've been doing the show how long now?
18 years. I think we started in March last year, so
Yeah.
what, a
Yeah.
year and 3 months?
And before that, we were dealing with the and stuff. And so you and I have been like talking about all the stuff that we're going through, and here we are. But anyway, please continue.
What I was going to say about the dream thing. Come on.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Let's do the cha-cha with the...
Just so we don't get too tripped out.
Drunken philosophy is awesome.
Isn't it awesome?
That's right, Jim. That's exactly what this is.
We're just getting warmed up.
Informed.
We're just getting warmed up.
So I read a study about sleep and the different stages of sleep.
Uh-huh.
And from my limited knowledge of how the brain works, when you get, and here's the thing, I'm kind of putting this forward, but I don't know if it's actually true. I read this study, and this looks different.
Gimlet.
Ooh,
It's like, that's a Nico-chan
look at
gimlet.
that. And
A
I'm
Nico
already,
special.
I'm buzzed on the edge of another phase. So, can I try this,
Yes.
or should I wait?
Drink a lot of water also.
Okay, I need to do that, and I'm gonna wait till Steve gets
You guys
his.
are getting drunk.
I'm definitely getting
Yeah, we
drunk.
are.
So,
Oh, and by the way, I love the black jacket. That inspired me to bring out my jacket. So we
Oh.
were doing the
What are
martinis.
you guys supposed to talk about today?
we're gonna
We're
talk
getting there.
Yeah, we're getting there.
I got my prop.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, so in this study, they were testing students on their sleep cycle. And so they'd get people in the lab, and then they would wake them up randomly at different stages of their sleep. And this is years ago that I read this, so I'm going to get this all wrong. But actually, within the first half hour to an hour of the sleep cycle, they would wake people up, and it's interesting because that's the point in your sleep where you are taking the things that you have kind of laboriously thought about, okay, that you would be trying to convert to long-term memory or new skill acquisition. That's when your brain is, they would stop people from sleeping, wake them up, and ask them, what were you dreaming? Yes, I was dreaming. What were you dreaming about? And it would be something that they'd done during that day. So they're like, oh, okay. So early on in the sleep cycle, it's like skill acquisition, and you'll dream about doing that thing. And I remember it was like skiing or something. Like they'd had people doing skiing earlier in that day. So yeah, I was dreaming about skiing. I was looking at my skis. And then the next thing that happens is your amygdala was engaged, and the amygdala is where all of your negative emotions are. And I don't want to say too much because I'll screw up the definitions, but what I think happens in there is when we have nightmares, when we wake up and we're like, oh, I was having a nightmare, I think it's at that stage of your sleep that you're waking up. Is when your amygdala is engaged. So it's a little bit more biological than just, kind of, oh, I just had a nightmare. It's like, no, you were awakened at this particular point in your sleep cycle. So I was going to make a point about what you were saying a little bit more about the dream study, but that's all I got now because I'm drinking.
Well, I'm waiting to hear your impression of the Nico-chan gimlet because I want one next.
Well, I don't want to have it until you have it. So here's what I'm going to do right now.
Well, okay, hopefully there's another gimlet on the way, so then we'll each have one.
Okay.
And so was there an Amanda thing that you wanted to like?
Oh, she was talking about which one's Crockett and Tubbs, which one's Tubbs. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to answer this question while I use the restroom.
Fat Bottom 412 inquiry.
Be right
Is
back.
it safe to use the mono input while it switches in stereo? Sounds come through all speakers, slight tone change. Don, thank you for the question. Mono input while switches zero. So when you're in the, sorry, switch and stereo. Mono input, switch and stereo means that the cabinet is in 4 ohms instead of 16. So the traditional wiring of 412 cabinet, 4 speakers, each speaker is 16 ohms, and the cabinet impedance is 16 ohms. When you have a switchable impedance cabinet, what you're doing is you're rewiring the speaker combination. So for the 16 ohm combination, you're using a series parallel wiring. Depending on the manufacturer of the cab, the top and bottom left speakers and the top and bottom right speakers are in parallel, and then those 2 pairs are in series, or the top 2 speakers are in parallel, the bottom 2 speakers are in parallel, and then those 2 pairs are in series. Either way, it's a series parallel wiring. 2 16 ohm pairs in parallel equals 8. And 2 8 ohm pairs of speakers wired parallel, wired in series, equals 16. So that's how a single 16 ohm speaker equals a 16 ohm cabinet when there's 4. The other way to wire them is all 4 speakers in parallel. To do that, simply all 4 speakers are in parallel. So what the switch does is when you're using the cabinet in stereo and you set it in the stereo mode, you're setting it so that the left pair of 16 ohm speakers wired in parallel are 8 and the right parallel pair are 8. And then when you only plug into the mono jack, those 2 8 ohm pairs combine in parallel when you're in the stereo mode. That makes the cabinet 4 ohms. Now, is that okay to run your 8 ohm or 16 ohm cabinet into that? Sure it is. The impedance mismatch will create a tonal coloring change. What it does is actually change the relationship between the amplifier and the speaker impedance wise. So no mismatching the speaker and the amp doesn't necessarily damage either one. What really causes the damage is if you have a massive impedance mismatch and you're like got everything turned all the way up and you're abusing everything as hard as possible, then it's more likely that you're
That's when all the weird stuff starts to
when
happen.
a tube is going to fail or a speaker is going to break or something like that.
When you're being
but that
extreme.
that's the worst case outcome of just trying an experiment. It isn't going to hurt anything in the sense that just by wiring it that way and plugging it in that way, things aren't going to catch on fire. They're just going to be different until you abuse everything. Cheers, guys.
Absolutely.
Now, this is basically a martini version of a margarita.
That's interesting.
It's gin and lime juice and there might be a little curacao in there.
What do you think of that?
I just love it because it's so much like a margarita. It's the only thing that's missing is the salt and the tequila.
It's definitely, I could see the salt here. Now, I'm just going to, from my snap judgment, holy crap.
So we've got the Roku, and we've got just a hint of maple syrup, just a drop or two,
And then lime juice.
and lime and fresh
I
lime
like
juice. And
this.
I love this.
But the martini,
The martini,
my
when you're drinking the
favorite.
martini, you've got a martini on one hand and you got your arm around Hawkeye's shoulders in the other. That's what a martini is to me. A gimlet is what you drink when all the tequila in the house is drank. How do we make a margarita? All we got is Roku. I got it.
and it's not a, you know what, I think that's why I'm a little bit like, I just want a margarita.
Because just want 9 of those, yeah.
Yeah. And the martini is, it's its own species,
Right.
right?
Right. So, Don, to just finish, it's the different impedance that causes the different behavior. When you have an impedance mismatch, it's the impedance mismatch between the speakers and the amplifier that cause the amp to behave a little bit differently. It doesn't necessarily damage things. It's okay to try. Usually what happens is the mid-range, if you have an impedance, the mid-range will go, you'll get a more of a mid-range forward sound. The bottom end might dry up a little bit. The top end might flatten out a little bit. That's sort of a trick of the Mark II C+, the Mark II amps, the Mesa amps. They never made an output transformer that had a 16 ohm tap on it. Randy's idea was just like,
oh yeah, I remember
who
you
gives a
explaining
rat's ass about all those extra impedance functions? It's 4 ohms, it's 8 ohms. If you plug 8 into 16, so what? Who cares? Well, I cared. It made a difference to me. Articulation, the wallop on the low end, an 8 ohm amp into a 16 ohm cabinet didn't get that. But what a Mark II into a 412 cabinet did was made it more mid-focused. The Mark II amp was already a mid-focused amp. So when you mismatch a Mark II into a Marshall cabinet, what you get is sort of a mid-forward amp. And how do you get rid of some of that mid-forward? You carve it out with the EQ a little bit.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to play metal and just a little bit of carving isn't enough, then you do this big V cut and you carve out all of the mid-range. And then you've got an amp that's got top end clarity and bottom end wallop into a cabinet that's got Celestians and that classic Marshall sound. And that's what begat the whole Mesa V-shape EQ thing, which it was never intended to do originally. But
Right,
that's
and that's
kind
something that we talked about
Yeah.
with the 2CP.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the whole. Well, see, but that's
Is the
that-
synergy
Right.
doesn't have the ohm issue.
But you can.
It can, but if you're not set up that way, with the power section of that, the way the Mesas are, and you set the EQ up the same way that people typically
It'll behave a
did.
little differently.
Exactly.
In order
and
to
then
get
you're
the complete-
going, hey, this doesn't act like.
To get the full experience, for example, you use the power station as a power amp for the Synergy preamp, and you put a 2CP in there. Okay, so then you set the power station for 8 ohms and plug it into a 16 ohm Marshall cabinet, and then you get the whole rest of the pie.
Yeah, right.
Since we're talking about speaker questions, have you tried loading a cab with a mix of P50s and Fanes? Wondering how those speakers mix. The Fane was the combination of trying to get Eminence to make the speaker that I wanted to exist, and that speaker was elements of a greenback, elements of not a vintage 30, but the H30, the original 30-watt Celestion that had the bigger magnet. It was like in the 70s, it was the 412 cab that had the bigger magnets, and it was basically called the keyboard bass cab. It just had a little stiffer cone and a bigger magnet.
Okay.
So the differentiation between a guitar amp and a bass amp in the 70s was 10 ounces of of extra magnet material and a little bit more power handling capacity, and that was it. That's how much guitar amp manufacturers gave a shit about bass players. Like, yeah, we'll put a little bigger magnet on it, so
Well, what's funny about it is,
it farts out 10% less than it did before.
but then some guitar players who are looking for a particular thing would repurpose that. Like,
Right.
hey,
yeah.
and that was kind of the
Right, and I really liked the sound of the H30, and I liked the sound of the greenback, but it was a little too mid-forward and it wasn't snappy on the bottom, and it didn't have any crispness on the top. And the 30 had a little more of that. When you put them together in one cabinet, they were closer, but still not quite, and didn't have quite the right detail for me.
Yeah.
So I went to them and tried to make it, and we started working on it, and then they killed the project. So I went to Eminence and fleshed it out with them, and that's what we came up with. But they never were able to come up with a voice coil formulation that would A, handle the power and the heat, and B, give me the energy out of the magnet assembly that I wanted, because they couldn't guarantee that it would hold together. because they only wanted to use a paper voice coil, which sounds really great, but it can't handle the heat as well. So there were some manufacturing limitations on Eminent's side that just sort of prevented them from going all the way.
Yeah.
When Fane came back, they offered that last little piece of the puzzle. We can give you the formulation of the adhesive formulation that makes the voice coil and the cone and spider assembly all hold together under pretty intense punishment.
Uh-huh.
The power handling capacity of the voice coil itself and the little larger magnet, so that it had horsepower. The larger magnet would give you more punch, but it would also give you more top end, which you may not necessarily want. So you want to be able to tweak the cone
Right.
so that it's a little smoother and sweeter on the top. And they were just able to put those last few pieces together. Why am I telling you all that?
And they were open to that because
when
they
you
were...
put the P50 together with the Fanes in a 412 cab, you don't really need to do that, because the Fanes are really the culmination of all those different speaker
But
characteristics.
what if
in
somebody
one
looks at the
speaker.
P50 is like, I love this for its specific character. Like, your subjective experience is that the P50 was, the best you could do for its time, and then the Fane was the culmination of what you were actually looking for. But that is your experience with them. Somebody might have come to the P50, without your particular biases and said, that's a particular voice, and then the Fanes are a particular voice. What are you about to do here?
Fane,
Are you juggling?
P50.
Yeah. I mean, I guess
Here's
what you're saying...
the real complication, Braxton. The real complication is, as a result of the fact that the P50s don't quite manage the sensitivity rating of the Fanes, they're going to be a little quieter in volume. So when you put two Fanes and two P50s together in the cabinet, say you put the P50s in the top, and please don't do an X pattern.
Okay, don't go there.
We're not going to go
about
there.
that before.
But the tops, if you put the P50s in the top, this might be an advantage for you. They're going to be quieter than the speakers on the bottom.
Idiot Burns, this is better than Namm. Dude, everything is better than Namm.
Everything is better than Namm. Thank you. Holy effing!
I am so happy that I was not...
Everything is better than Namm.
My whole feed is like
Dude,
people at Namm,
dude,
and I'm like...
you so nailed it. You so fucking nailed it.
But that's funny. Okay, so I'm going to put
And
you
I
on the
was going to
spot.
mention something about Namm, but I want to say Namm's going on right now. This is the Saturday of the Namm show.
We're not there.
We are so happy
We're here.
to be there, because we're actually doing productive stuff. And
Cheers again.
We've been doing Namm for 30 years, and it's an organization. It had its purpose. It's just like the Mesa show in Germany. It's outlived its usefulness, and Namm is on its way.
And I'm being a dick about it. Obviously, we know what's great about Namm.
What's great about Namm is going down there and doing this with the people you
right.
love and care about and do business with.
Exactly.
And talk about all the things that you hate about having gone to Anaheim to do that.
Yeah.
That's
and
really the conversation.
Yeah.
Because the food sucks.
I'm being a hater. Yeah.
Everything in every restaurant in Anaheim sucks. There aren't any good restaurants there anymore. The hotels are so plastic and artificial. The whole Disney
Yeah.
experience,
But the
everything
truth is,
about it.
Like,
The only reason to go to Anaheim is to see somebody that you care about and do business with and are good friends with over decades, and you just want to hook up.
But I have met some legit friends at Namm that I never let go of.
That's right.
And they became more than Namm friends. So
That's right.
I always talk smack about Namm, but I have to say, like, the first couple times I went there, it was the most amazing thing I ever did. It really was. And then you kind of burn out.
And when
that's
when
my
was the
hater.
first time you went there?
Well, I lived in Colorado forever, so I've been in LA for 13 years. I got out here in 2009. I think the first time I ever went was 2010.
Oh, well, you You were way past Namm's peak then.
And I know
Peak
that.
Namm.
And I know that.
Peak Namm was like 1992, 1993, 4.
But still,
That's when.
well, that was like peak guitar
That's
culture.
when every girl in the place was wearing a bustier, and every night at the bar
Wait, I still
resulted
wear
in
one.
somebody being hauled out in an ambulance. That was peak Namm.
Yeah.
You did business during the day, and then after you butt heads with dealers and distributors all day long talking about pricing, shipping, logistics, margins, blah, 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 lead times, quality, how we're going to deal with warranty, all the stuff that is involved in manufacturing, selling, and distributing worldwide and all that. After you hammered all that out, you went to the bar and you drank until you didn't even know what planet you were on anymore. And then you did it again the next day.
Yeah.
And I'm, like you said, I made a lot of dear friends.
Yeah, and
doing that.
if you don't, if you haven't,
And I'm telling you, when you meet somebody and you find out that you have things in common, like getting so hammered that you can't even make it out of the elevator before pissing, so you have a pissing contest in the elevator, so that by the time the elevator lands on the ground floor again, and,
Yeah.
and you walk out,
Yeah.
and people walk in the elevator, and the carpet is all squishy, and they get right back out. That's something. You did something.
yeah. But the other thing is, if you haven't grown up in a major metropolitan center, which I certainly didn't, right? Coming out here, it's funny because thinking about it now, like I'm completely numb to it. But I remember first going to Namm, and like the amount of musical celebrities that you are rubbing elbows with. It feels like music Disneyland. And that is one of the major things of what made it incredible. You're like,
Whoa.
I saw so and so, I saw so and so, and then I saw so and so playing at that booth.
Yeah,
and
but a
then I
lot of
sat
those
right
people
next to-
were like coming into the scene at that time. So
well,
everybody
that's
was.
before me. I'm just talking about
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah,
experience
yeah.
of, you know, like.
Well, my experience with all these guys were like happening at the
but
time.
you had it too. I mean,
Right.
at a different time. You grew up in Seattle, and you did come down here and go, "Holy shit! I'm talking to so and so," and you have your own list. I have my own list, and you know, once you've lived in a place like this long enough, you do wind up kind of being numb to it and taking it for granted. But it is fun to think back to the early days of when you first show up in a place like this, and you know, the first time you bump into people that you've been listening to your entire life, and either you're standing next to them, or you wind up on a gig with them, or you even go over to their house, and you're like, okay, that's why I did this whole thing.
Scroll down so we can see the latest comments.
Well, I don't want to miss any questions.
Oh, okay.
And Amanda.
No,
I'm gonna have to
anybody
skip
can't walk
this
in and
one.
go to the show. You have to pre-register. You have to buy a pass.
We'll come back to that one, Amanda.
Yeah.
I promise. Maybe in another episode. Okay. Last time I was at Namm, Stevie had long hair. You could do long hair
That's been
again.
a long ass time. You
could
haven't
do
been
long
in
hair
Namm
again.
in 30
I
years.
think you should do long hair again.
You know, it's amazing how much brown I still have. I'm amazed. I shouldn't have that much brown. Dan Huff. Yeah, babe.
You know what? I have seen some pictures of Tyler guitars at Namm this year. So is Tyler there, or does he just have
His
guitars
people
and
are there.
booths?
He's not there.
Okay.
Tyler,
How many Tyler guitars have you owned?
2.
I owned 3.
Yeah, Tyler is
And-
a long time. I don't have any Tylers right at the moment. He's
I don't
still
either.
my blood brother. I love him to death. Jim Tyler just had a dual lung transplant,
I didn't know that.
and he survived it. So we're all pulling for him because he's just too much
Hey.
of he's just too much of a like me.
Toast to Jim.
He's too much of a pissed off asshole to die, and good for him. So
Wow.
he had a pretty intense medical issue that he is overcoming, and God love him for doing it.
I still dream about discovering that. Oh, I didn't sell that Tyler. How fucking cool!
You know about the Tyler headstock, right?
No.
Well, because
Like the regular headstock?
yeah, the regular headstock.
Yeah.
Well, the running joke was
The hockey kind of.
the running joke was I love Tyler's, I just hate the headstock.
Didn't he do it because he was like, just kind of like a malcontent, was just like, fuck it.
Malcontent? You want to talk about malcontent?
He's a malcontent.
He is the malcontent.
Yeah. He's
here's
way
how
more
much. Here's
malcontent.
how much of a malcontent Tyler is. Here's his headstock.
It really is.
That's exactly what the headstock is.
It really is.
That's Tyler's headstock right there. I'm not exaggerating.
That's how he
the
did it?
headstock.
Wow.
When you walk into a shop, a luthier shop, and the first thing that you see when you open the door and walk in is a sign that says, I fucking hate guitars, you know you're in good company. You know you're in the right place.
I had 2 Landau models, not the Burning Water one. I had a black one that was my main guitar for a couple of years. I had a red one. The black one had a rosewood fretboard. The red one had a maple fretboard, and then I traded another guy. I think it was another Landau. But you know, occasionally people will send me clips of, hey, do you remember doing this session? Stuff I played on years ago, and I'll go, wow, that was some killing tone. It'll be like, yep, that's when I had that black Landau. That was a killing guitar.
How amazing it is! How amazing
Miss
is it that now I saw, speaking of Namm, some company whose name you probably recognize, but I'm not going to name them because A, I don't remember the name, and B, it would be nasty for me to talk about it because I'd be basically putting them down. But their new model that they just came out with looks exactly like a Tyler Psychedelic Vomit.
Maybe I need to get a Tyler again. Maybe I should get a Tyler.
And I was thinking the same thing. And so some relatively new guitar company's big new offering at Namm is something that Tyler came up with 20 years ago because the headstock wasn't enough of an FU. I want to come up with an FU plus what your vomit would look like if you ate a bunch of pizza and drank cheap red wine and vomited out in front of a club. That's the finish I want. And they now some company today is coming out, oh, this is our new offering. Like, dude, get a fucking clue already. Do something original. Can we... Can we get off the drunk ramp and get on to the electronic drunk ramp?
That's fair. That's fair. That's totally fair. I actually had 4 Tylers. If you
what was that? Well, what did I miss? Steve, take the. Do you No. Joe's got a jacket on too. That's why I wore a jacket.
But he's saying if you pull that off, do our blacks match? I don't know.
No, because I'm wearing a t-shirt and he's wearing a jacket.
No. I have a t-shirt on too. If I take.
All right. All right, now we're the Bobbsey twins. You happy now?
Now put your jacket.
No, fuck that. I want to.
This is Martini time.
It's Martini.
I was wearing a black t-shirt and I was leaving my place and I went, you know what? We're doing martinis. I'll just throw on a jacket.
But we did answer the question.
Or a Grosh. I'm a Grosh endorser, man. At one point I think I owned 5 Groshes, and right now I'm down to 1. It's my black Grosh Electrojet, and it is my main guitar. It has been for over 10 years, and I can't say enough about that guitar. When I talk about getting another Tyler, it's just Tylers have a thing. He uses that different bridge. There's not a ton of thump on the bottom end, but there's an airy thing that those guitars have that is really, really, really nice that I miss.
Tyler's. I was hanging out with Jim one night, and he was telling me about doing the.
Oh man, I was like Fonzie and Chachi there for a second. Oh shit, that's hilarious.
I know which one I am. I'm Chachi.
That's fine. You're Scott Baio. You can do that. Hey.
I'm Scott Baio without the failed. Okay, I'm not going to go any farther than that. You know what I'm talking
Guys, 25-year. What do you mean by that, man? Are you drinking a 25-year-old spirit? or we're behaving like 25-year-olds.
Yes.
I don't know, brother.
Okay, so
Yes.
yes,
We have to talk about caps.
Jim's guitars,
Yeah.
and I've tried to sort of articulate what's special about them, because
They're special.
when you put something into the shape of a Stratocaster, you kind of pigeonhole yourself, and he always sort of rebelled against that and sort of acquiesced to it at the same time because that's what people wanted. He considered that making the sort of Strat-shaped guitars, he considered that kind of like the least of his abilities, and he's still really sort of adamant about there's really a guitar craft that I would prefer to be doing more often, but
nobody wants them.
but nobody wants it.
So I'll do these Strat
So I'll do
fucking
these things, and
Yeah.
I'll do them. At least if I have to do that, I'm going to do it effing better than anybody effing else. And
They're really, really,
but
really great
is
guitars.
it better? It doesn't matter if it's better. What matters
No.
is that it has a personality that when you play it.
But that's...
And it's the same with our amps. This is why we've always met eye to eye, which is like, it doesn't matter if it's better or you think it's better or not better. What matters is if you feel that it works better for you as opposed to something that doesn't work better for you.
Right,
And
right.
if you don't like the amps we make or the guitars that Tyler makes, absolutely fine. You're not our customer, and
cool.
cool. I'll buy
Totally
you
cool.
cab fare to the PV Artist
And I
Relations
get it.
Department.
Oh, no, you're not...
I will. I've actually said that. When somebody called me up one time and said, "Why should I buy one of your amps? I don't hear any difference between a Pitbull and a dual rectifier. I don't hear any difference."
That's a novice ear.
And I said, if you don't
No.
hear any difference between the two, you absolutely should buy the dual rectifier. Go
Well,
buy
that's
that.
true.
He was so angry. Why are you selling your product?
Oh, because you wanted you to sell him on it. Interesting.
Because you don't want our product. You want the fantasy of sounding like a rock star without being one. Go buy that. That's what you want.
You know
Why
what?
do I have to fight for your business? Well, you should fight for my business. No, I've got
You're like, I'm cool.
capacitor suppliers to go fucking choke.
You're like, hey, man.
And I always say with our suppliers, I want suppliers that are close to us, our sheet metal suppliers, our cabinet suppliers. I want them all to be close, geographically close to us.
Yeah.
I want them to be within choking distance.
Okay.
So when I need to get in my car and drive over there and get in their face and go, "What the hell are you trying to do to my business?" I want them in choking distance. I want to go face to face and tell them they're making my life miserable and why. So that's what I want. I don't want to hear any excuses. I don't want to have to fly around halfway around the world to talk to somebody about why the specifications for our output transformers, the way they are wound, have to be adhered to religiously. Well, it doesn't make any difference. Okay, fine, you're not our supplier anymore. Wait. What did I say? You said you didn't want to follow our specs. I didn't say that. Yes, you did. Okay, I'll follow your specs. Okay, I'll follow your specs. That's what I mean. You have to have suppliers within choking distance. They have to know that, first of all, we have to buy enough from that supplier for them to give a shit. Yeah. And second of all, if we're buying enough for you to give a shit, we're going to make sure that we're going to choke your ass if you don't give a shit. And they need to understand that. They need to learn that. And the only way they're going to learn that is for me to, on a Saturday night, drink a bunch of martinis and gimlets, nurse my hangover on Sunday, be pissed on Monday, and get in my car and go there and go,
But you know who
all right,
rules?
my hangover is over now, but I'm still mad at you because you made our shit wrong.
Yeah, but who rules is a company that has massive accounts.
Yeah.
That actually cares about getting it right for a smaller account.
Mm-hmm. And our sheet metal fabrication company that we've been dealing with since 1990 are still our sheet metal fabricator because they
Since
understand
1990,
that.
that's
In
awesome.
fact, we've been with them so long that the original owner, the original CEO of the company, retired and handed the operation to the next generation of people. He was like a few years older than me. A beautiful, wonderful Indian, Pakistani Indian American immigrant who built this fantastic company.
What's he called? What's his name?
His name is, well, I always called him by his nickname because his full name is kind of complicated, but Kumar, Pradeep Kumar.
And that's your dude?
And that was my dude. In fact, I didn't even know he was retiring. I called just say, hey, Kumar, nice to hear from you. He always wanted to be called by his last name. Why do you want me to call you by your last name? Well, because my first name is too hard to pronounce. And I went, teach me how to pronounce your first name, and I promise you I will pronounce your first name properly. And it was like, Pradeep was the short version. It was Pradeep.
Oh, okay.
And it's been a while. But anyway, he retired. But the company is still...
Amanda, Steve is adverse to thirstiness. Brother, get busy.
Dude, I've got...
Get busy.
I'm golden here. I can sip.
Well, I know you're golden, but you're behind. You need to catch up.
Anyway, I love this guy. He was always honest with me. He's always been straight up. We're running into a little problem with the paint spec, or your engineering tolerances are a little tight. Can you loosen it up a little bit? Because if you do, we don't have to jump through these extra flaming hoops to make your chassis. I would go down there and say, all right, show me what you mean. Any other supplier would just go, look, we don't want to make it that way. Fine, we're just going to no bid on you. They're gonna reject the bid from us because our standards are too high. This gentleman said, come on down to our factory and let me explain to you why you're really engineering-wise, your design is excellent, but it's practically impossible to produce
I really
in the
like
real
that
world.
because that's how you
That's
have a
how
relationship.
I went, oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What I learned from that exercise was that in CAD, I was designing impossible to produce engineering designs.
Yeah, that's...
And then he would say, okay, here's the machine that does exactly the operation that you're asking us to do. And here's why this part of the machine can't twist itself into a pretzel to make the turn that you're asking it to make. And I went, oh, why? Because I didn't go to school and learn.
But then you're like, thank you.
I didn't go to school to learn
Exactly.
mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
I learned
You came
because
from a
guys like
completely different
this
place.
invited me to lunch to go down to their place, have a little libation, and explain to me, dude, I understand that you want it made nice. Now I'm going to explain to you how to make it right. And I'd be going, thank you, I'll buy the next round.
But you were a guitar player.
I was a
Who
guitar.
was
I
like,
didn't
you know
fuck
what?
all.
I also like, pardon me, but I also like fucking around with amps. Hey, in between doing gigs, I need to make money to pay rent.
And
okay, I'll fuck around with amps.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you're doing the side hustle that starts to become your main hustle.
Right.
And then people are like, hey, Steve, you should build an amp. And you're like,
and I've been to suppliers. I've been to sheet metal fabrication places where I told them what I wanted, and they literally escorted me out of the building.
But what
you
I'm
are
saying
insane.
is,
That's never going to fucking happen, especially at the price you want it done for. Get out of here. You're wasting my time. And I'm like, I'm just.
but what I'm saying is, you came to this whole thing through the serious side or back door. You know?
Oh, I came kicking and screaming into the back door. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. Man, guys, I've been watching you guys talk about Mesas. I love Mesa amps. I always have. I get along with them really well. I actually still own a Mark IV.
And I love Randall Smith.
Yeah.
And I just spoke to Doug West at Mesa Boogie about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, we want to have him on the show.
And he's a lovely human being. And Randy and I go way, way back. And there is, let me tell you.
But I know what Randy means to you. and well, kind of.
Oh, I think you do. Yeah.
And I mean, you know, when we start talking about these things, it's like subjective, right? And man, I don't want to sound like a shill. I mean, all I'm using these days is your stuff, but I have, in my past, I've owned so many Mesa amps, and I love them, man. I never had a Mesa amp that I didn't really enjoy and get along with great. It didn't feel like I could walk out on stage and throw down and feel like this thing has got my back. Including dual rectifiers. I've owned 2 Tremaverb combos, Tremaverb 212 combos, and you know, we like to make fun of them for the obvious reasons. You know, they're kind of fizzy machines. But dude, I still love a Tremaverb combo, and you know, if I wasn't such a minimalist, I would still own one of those things. So I like Mesas, man. I love them. I feel a little bit like when I'm playing them that they play me a little bit. You know what I mean? Like I'm putting on a Halloween mask and like, okay, I'm playing a Mesa.
Well, because they have such a strong signature that that if you're not a great player, they make you look better, and if you are a great player, you have to work your way out of that, and eventually you do one of two things: you either figure out how to make it work for you, or you move on.
Yeah.
I never bonded with them, their amplifier specifically, because that
I could see you not doing that.
That's just a personality thing. On the other hand, I always have had a great relationship with Randall Smith, and I still do to this day, and I love the guy, and he helped me out a lot along the way, and
that's super cool. But I love those amps, man.
So how far into the show are we now that we haven't talked fuck all about what?
Okay, it is an hour and 22 minutes, and it's not time to talk about cap formation. We are taking a pivot, and we're talking about what we were supposed to talk about now. There's a Fender Concert behind you.
There is? Get the fuck out of here.
From it was built in 1964. Would you like to tell the story about where it came from? Because in the video, okay,
you tell the story. You know the.
Well, I'm not going to tell the origin story, but I will tell you guys that earlier today we put out a video where earlier this week Steve pulled the concert sort of out of mothballs, put it on the bench with the idea that he was going to reform the caps because he hadn't turned it on in 20 years. So the idea was, okay, we need to be gentle with this thing. And so there's a video up on YouTube on the Fryette channel that details the entire process of reforming the caps and looking at every component in the chain and making the decision, right, to not change anything, to keep it, well, 100% original, although there's something that's not in that video.
And then did you take any pictures of that? Did you make a video of the pictures so that we could show them?
Of which part?
Inside the chassis, showing the transformer wiring, the soldering, blah 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 blah.
The transformer, the change thing, that's in the super video. So I don't have any. That's on another hard drive right now.
Okay, all right.
Do you want to talk about that tonight or not?
Well, only because it's so it's such serendipity. I've had this amp. My brother bought this.
So it's 1964.
Can you see this thing? Is it? Oh, it's covered up by the bar. Nika-chan.
Here, I'll lift it up.
We need to. No, don't lift it up. We'll just move the rolling bar.
Lift it up. Okay. I can move the bar.
I bought this amp from my brother in '68. He bought it 1 or 2 years old, I think. Can you see the little red light here? This is the 1964 concert amp, Fender 410 concert amp. I bought it from my brother. My brother and I were in competition to see who was going to be the guitar player and the drummer in the band. And I ended up being the drummer because my brother was a shitty drummer. And he could play chords okay. So in those days, you didn't need to be a flash guitar player. You needed to be able to play all the chords of the Beatles songs and Animal songs
And turn up and sound like rock
and the
roll.
Kinks songs and so on and so forth. He had a National amp and a Gibson ES 125T, I think, like a hollow body, like a 335, only no cutaways. The neck joined the body at the 12th fret. A melody maker pickup in the neck position only, with this big plastic pickguard and
Wait a minute, the Gibson what?
ES 125T, I think, or 140.
That's the one with the pickup and the volume knob on the pickguard.
Oh yeah, the big plastic molded assembly.
And then like there's no cutaway?
No cutaways.
So it's like meets at like the 12th or 14th
Yeah.
fret. So you're not playing.
Yeah, you're playing C's and G's and D's and.
It's almost
shut
like
the
a
fuck
Charlie
up.
Christian.
Yeah,
sort
pretty
of-
much.
Yeah.
So he had that, and then he wanted to move up from the National. And we went
Why did
down
he
to,
buy that guitar?
It was a Gibson.
So it was just like, I'll take the Gibson?
It was a Gibson, and it was
Interesting.
in their budget.
What kind of music did he like?
Well, we were listening to Kinks and Rolling Stones and the Beatles, and it was like all new. This is 64, 63, 64, 65.
You were right there at the advent. of
Yeah,
this.
yeah. All I wanted to do was be Ringo. I had the snare drum, and
Dude, you could.
I still have snares right there.
Still all you need to be.
Exactly. And so when he quit playing guitar, I bought the amp from him for $200. And
What year?
oh shit! Well, that had to have been about 72.
Okay, all right.
And I just hung on to it because it was in the family. My brother and I were progressing in music, and then he moved on and I didn't. And I felt like this amplifier represented something in the development of my family, who were always musically oriented anyway. And this was like a milestone for us, and I never wanted to see that sold. I never wanted to see the guitar sold. He sold the guitar, but he also told me he knows who bought it, and I've been negotiating with them to buy it back so that we would have that. It's just a thing with me. It just, it's not a killer guitar, but there's a lot of memories attached to it. So I've been talking to the people about buying it back. Anyway, I kept the amp, and I've always kept it in really good shape, and I didn't take it out and gig a lot and beat the hell out of it. So we got into this whole thing about, I've always had this beef with guitar amp techs out there. Recap the amp. After 10 years, after 20 years, you have to recap the amp. Recap. Anytime you take your amp into a shop, oh, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to recap the amp. And I'm like, no. Do you change all the tires on your car every time you go into the shop? No. You only replace them when you need them. Capacitors in a guitar amplifier, they're not like oil in a car. They're not necessarily like tires on a car. But they're a thing that when they need attention, you give them attention. And when they don't, you don't. And when somebody tells you that they need attention and they don't need attention, that's a problem. And the problem arises when the person that's telling you that it is a problem can't demonstrate to you why it is a problem. All they can tell you is, well, I'm an experienced tech and I'm telling you blah, 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 blah. And this has been going on the internet for a decade or so now, where there's this arbitrary time limit that capacitors last, and after that time limit, they have to be changed.
Well, but that was present long before the internet, because there were these books
but it
that
didn't
kind of
really
pushed
get
that sort of thing.
It didn't really get traction until it became.
Well, I actually felt like it had traction in the mid-90s. That's when I got hip to it. You know, my buddy had all of these, kind of homegrown tube amp tech books, And that's where it kind of came from.
Well,
we would buy these old Fenders
I mean,
and
right
Marshalls
after,
and change everything.
right after, at the end of the '80s and into the '90s. Okay, so there's the
It's like Aspen Pittman,
there's
Mark
the Pittman
Kendrick.
book, the Kendrick book, you know, and they're starting to talk about capacitor age and blah 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 blah.
And it was always like, how to make your amp sound better.
Okay,
Change everything.
Team, friends, followers.
Hey, what's up, Ziegler?
Malcontents.
What's up, John?
I'm here to tell you, tune out the recap shit out of your head. Tune it out as an automatic maintenance operation that somebody has arbitrarily decided that it's a thing. It's not a thing. It's been proven not to be a thing so obviously and so frequently over the decades that it blows my mind that people still adhere to it. And why do they do that? The only thing I can think of is because they want to take your money, because there isn't any.
I don't think that's it. I don't.
Or it's they believe it themselves.
Well, so for me, I think I would. It's just worth throwing this in here. I think I
I'm
was
not
telling
drinking
you
my
the other
martini
day.
fast enough. I'm going to have an
God, the
olive right now.
martini is
Please
so
continue. Please
good.
continue.
Drink water.
It's that when I would buy a vintage Fender, this is what I was mainly doing.
Yeah.
My thing was I was playing a lot of gigs. And my thinking was, you know what? I don't want to buy this Fender with the old stuff in it that's probably going to fail. Probably going to fail. Yeah, I know. I
Because
wasn't
somebody
very
told
well
you it was probably
informed.
gonna fail.
Exactly. But so I go, okay, I'm going to be playing, you know, I was playing 4 or 5 gigs a week. You know, and every gig was hours and hours and hours a night. And it was like, okay, I don't want to take this amp out that's going to have stuff that fails and then, you know, fall in love with the sound of this amp. And then, you know, in 6 months or whatever, need to change everything out. And then I'm going to go, oh, what happened to my amp? So I would think, okay, I bought, like, you know, I'm thinking of my 65 Deluxe that I still have. It was like, okay, let me just change everything out and bring the stuff that needs to be, well, that can be refreshed. Let me just change it out and get to know the amp like that, with all new components in it.
Because what the fuck do you know anyway, right?
I didn't know anything. I didn't even, you know what, the truth is, I didn't even know how to make those amps sound good at that time. That was the amp that I learned to sound, I mean, to the degree that I can sound good, okay? That was the amp that I really learned. It's still home base for me, my 65 Deluxe Reverb. I learned to really, it's not what I learned to play, to operate a guitar on, but it's what I really learned to gig on, was that freaking amp. And I've been in the trenches with that damn thing, you know? And it's funny, you throw a mic in front of that thing in a giant PA and it can sound massive.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't played that amp in probably 3 years. I want you to look at it, actually. It's sick. It just sits in its case, but I still love that thing madly. But anyway, my point here is that it was just, well, just what I said. I thought if I change all of this stuff that can be changed and then everybody's telling me that it should change, then I'll get to know it in its new form before these things kind of fail. Now, what's kind of funny was, even after I changed all that stuff would fail.
Yeah.
And it'll always be, I remember, like,
That's the key thing.
whenever I'd be like, man, my amp sounds like the greatest amp in the world, I'd be like, okay, in the next week or two, it's going to take a shit. And it would, always.
Or you're being in a different environment and it doesn't work the same way. But that doesn't mean there was anything wrong with the amp. So, first off, I'm an idiot. I proudly proclaim that I am the recapping idiot. I watched a video today where there's a guy that you guys know who he is, that posts a lot of videos where he pretty much bags on a lot of stuff that he fixes, but he does videos about amps that he works on and what's wrong with them or what was designed poorly and boy, they shouldn't have been designed like that.
This
And
guy
it's
have a big
always
following?
He's got a huge following.
Okay.
He's like got 10 times the following that we have at least.
Wow.
And fine.
And he doesn't. He's just a tech.
Fine, great. He says all the right things to the people that want to hear what they want to hear, and fine. But to my mind, when somebody is that opinionated about how other people design their amps, my attitude is like, okay, well, let's see yours. And I haven't seen one yet. All I've seen.
That's what I've meant.
All I've seen is the guy bag on other manufacturers about how they do things and what they did wrong. So, all right, put up or shut up, Tal. But in the
that for
meantime,
me? Oh my God.
he posted a
Thank
video
you.
today
Thank you.
about what's wrong with the idea of reforming caps. What does reforming caps mean? Capacitors, electrolytic capacitors,
Thank you.
specifically power supply related capacitors, specifically aluminum electrolytics. What does aluminum electrolytic mean? Does it mean that they are aluminum colored? No, it means that inside the capacitor there's a thing that looks like a toilet paper roll with a few different layers in it, and one of the layers is aluminum, and one of the layers will be paper or mylar or some other kind of material, and then another layer will be aluminum again, and it'll all be rolled up into a toilet paper roll and stuffed into a can, and there'll be a lead coming out of the middle and a lead coming out of the end, and that'll be an electrolytic capacitor.
Mm-hmm.
And
so a capacitor is a little thing that stores
capacitor is
an electrical charge.
think of a capacitor as a battery. It stores a charge.
It stores a charge. Right.
Now, think of it as a battery
Interesting, Scott.
that's rechargeable.
Okay.
Now, think of it as a battery that, depending on the number that's written on the outside, 47 mic, 10 mic, 100 mic, 1,000 mic,
22.
right, that number tells you how often that battery needs to be recharged: every day, every hour, every minute, or every second.
Okay.
The smaller the number, the more often you have to recharge that capacitor.
That's so funny. I think of in Fenders it's 22s and 47s.
That's because the standard capacitor values used in the power supplies of Fenders. And that expresses essentially how many seconds or milliseconds that capacitor will store that charge. All right? So you have, if you unroll the toilet paper roll, you have a layer of aluminum, let's just say, for example, typical electrolytic capacitor, a layer of aluminum, a layer of paper, and a layer of aluminum. And they have a positive polarity and they have a negative polarity. How did they get a polarity? It's just a layer of aluminum and then another layer of aluminum and paper in between. How did they get a polarity? What determines whether you connect it with a positive polarity or a negative polarity?
Yeah.
What determines that is what voltage they apply to it after it's built.
Okay.
In other words, if they charge it the first time after the physical parts are assembled,
Yeah.
the cathode has the negative charge and the anode has the positive charge. That will be its polarity. Why? Okay, it doesn't just have two layers of aluminum and a layer of paper. It also has a saline solution mixed in there called the electrolyte.
Right.
And the electrolyte,
But does the electrolyte have, like, what is in the electrolyte?
salt.
Is that it? Because in my head, we talk about when caps happen, when the amp hasn't been powered on, things separate.
We'll get to that. We'll get to
All
that.
right, all right.
We'll get to that. It's basically, an electrolyte is a chemical reaction of the material inside the capacitor. So when the
Jay-Z will answer that question, man. He wants to know what the hell this Les Paul is about. What is it? Unless you want to say it right now.
it's a 1999 54 reissue R4. And I had a 53 original, and let me tell you, this thing just blew it out of
You have
the
a
water.
55.
I had a 50. I have
No,
a
you
55
have a
Junior.
55. And that
I had a
junior
53.
kills me.
I had a 53 gold top.
I didn't know you had that.
I did, and I let it go because it was a great guitar to have in a case under the bed.
Yeah.
You know,
I
it was
understand.
wonderful to say I had
I
a
have a
53
57
because I was
Strat like
born in
that.
53. Exactly, but at the end of the day, this is the guitar I played all the time. Why? Because it was an amazing guitar to play and still is.
That is a killing guitar.
Yeah, it's a killing guitar. It's
John,
got a
you
killing
should
neck.
play
It's
it,
got a
man.
killing pick. It's all stock. I
Yeah.
haven't messed with it. I did mess with it, not unmessed with it. I put it back to stock. All right, the electrolyte. How the capacitor is charged after it's physically made is what determines its polarity. All right, now you apply a voltage to that capacitor and it will store that voltage over a certain amount of time. Depending on the load on the output of that capacitor, how it's used in the circuit, the amount of time that it takes for the voltage that it stores to discharge is dependent on what load is put on it. So that's where a capacitor and a resistor work together to form a time constant for a capacitor. So the larger the electrolytic capacitor, the more voltage it will store for whatever a period of time it will store it in the circuit that it's being used in. And it will keep operating that way as long as you operate it within its operating parameters. Now, a lot of people that will go online and look at capacitor specs and go, well, this is a 3,000 hour capacitor. This is a 2,000 hour capacitor. This is a 10,000.
Where do you find that rating?
It's on the manufacturing specs for the capacitor. Every manufacturer.
But is it printed on, like say if I'm
It's
looking
not
at
on the
an old
capacitor.
Fender,
It's
okay.
on the specification
Okay.
sheet.
All right.
This is where engineering comes in. You got to know when you're looking at a map how to get from Los Angeles to Detroit.
Right.
You just don't go, oh, let's just go east, and eventually somebody will go, am I in Detroit yet? No, you're still in Arkansas. You need to go north a little
Well,
farther.
you can get there in 6 months, or you
You're
can
right.
get there in 4 hours,
Right.
or 3 hours, or 2.5.
So, the amount of the lifetime specification of a capacitor is based on certain parameters. Those parameters are the maximum voltage the capacitor will operate at, the maximum current that the capacitor will operate at, the maximum temperature that the capacitor will operate at. The lifetime specification for the capacitor are based on the maximum voltage, the maximum current, and the maximum temperature that it's rated for a minimum of 24 hours.
Oh,
So think of it like this. The lifetime rating of the tire on your car, if it says this tire will last 10,000 hours, that means that tire will last 10,000 hours at 150 miles an hour,
yeah, they're going to
at
be.
200 degrees Fahrenheit, at 150 hours.
Right.
And anybody that's driven from Las Vegas to Utah, or
Well,
at 100 miles an hour, and I've done it on a motorcycle, so I know
yeah.
when I left Vegas and landed in, and I might be getting this back, but when I left Vegas and I landed at Salt Lake City, there was this straight highway. Straight highway. It was a straight line.
Yeah.
I went 100 miles an
15.
hour. I went 100 miles an hour on that highway
I know
for
that.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, you can do that.
And I pulled over and stopped at a
It's
diner.
not winter.
I pulled over and stopped at a diner and had breakfast because I started at 6 and I stopped
In
at
Vegas?
8. Somewhere between Vegas and Salt Lake City.
Okay.
When
Wait, you were headed to Salt Lake City?
Salt Lake City is after Vegas, right?
Yeah.
So I was.
I know this
Yeah.
this drive so intimately.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out.
So
where
I
you
was like on this straight line highway between.
Yeah, it's the 50. It's
Yeah.
the 15 until you reach this. Well, yeah.
Whatever it is, by the time I got to the diner, I parked my bike, I went in, I had breakfast, and when I came out, I was looking at my bike, and I looked at the back tire, and it was completely bald. And this was a new tire.
What month was this?
A week ago. No, it was May or June.
So we don't know what the average temperature on the road was at that time. This stuff is really interesting.
On a Harley, when you're at full bore like that,
Yeah.
on a highway like that, in the desert when there's just a small percentage of sand on the highway, that means your tire is spinning more than the traction that you're developing on.
I drove from
between the
Hilton
tire and the asphalt, so that you're actually sanding the tire as you're driving.
Sure.
So by the time I got to this diner 2 hours after leaving this town at 6 o'clock in the morning, by the time I got to the diner and had breakfast, I had sanded all the rubber off the back of the tire because I was on a road where there was low friction, or actually high friction. There was low rubber contact with the road because it was so dry and there was sand on the road. It sanded all the rubber off of a brand new tire. I was running it under worst case conditions. If you run a capacitor under worst case conditions, it will last 3,000 hours.
What do you call worst case conditions?
It doesn't matter. Right now, what matters is if you look at a capacitor spec and take 3,000 hours and divide that by the number of hours in a day, you can calculate that this capacitor will last 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever the calculation is.
5 years while power is being run to it?
Maximum power, maximum current, and maximum temperature that it's rated for.
Yeah. But we're not counting like hours that it's in a device. We're talking about that it's actually
operating at maximum temperature, current, and voltage. Okay? This is really important. Maximum. All three of the most important operating parameters of the capacitor is operating at maximum. It's a maximum ability to do that for 3,000 hours. Operated that way, that's a 3,000 hour capacitor. Any parameter that you divide by 10, that extends the capacitor life by a factor of 10. So if you take all three factors and divide them by 10, that's 10 times 10 times 10. That's 10 times 1,000, 10 times 3,000, which is 30, times 10,000, 10 times 10, which is 300, times 10, which is 3 million. That's how many hours that capacitor should last in a guitar amplifier, running at maybe 80% of its maximum voltage, but 0.1% of its maximum current and 0.01% of its maximum temperature. Okay? You have to account for all of those factors in the voltage specification, current specification, and the temperature specification of the capacitor to say how long it will last. That is why an amplifier that was made in 1964 will still have good power supply capacitors in it in 2022.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about the aluminum substrate between the two the insulator, the two layers of aluminum, and this electrolyte, which is this saline solution basically that helps create the environment in which a capacitor operates. Now, once the capacitor is charged, an aluminum sulfate, aluminum oxide layer forms in between those aluminum layers, and that helps form the insulation layer between those aluminum plates. Operating the capacitor creates that aluminum oxide layer. If you stop using that capacitor for an extended length of time, that aluminum oxide layer deteriorates. It starts to decompose.
Okay, that's different than what I thought. In the video that we put out today, I was likening it to like there was some sort of a recipe for this.
I was not very erudite in my explanation.
Well, I was talking about it being like, when you pick up salad dressing, like Italian dressing, and it's separated.
That's a perfect analogy.
Is it?
Absolutely.
Because what you're saying right now, I'm thinking, oh, I had that wrong.
No, you have absolutely right. The materials tend to separate,
Okay.
and you need them to coalesce back into an operating functional system. How do you do that? Well, how you don't do it is if your amplifier has been sitting unused for
20 years.
20 years, 6 months.
So my deluxe, I haven't turned on in 2 years. When I turn it on again, actually my super.
We're getting there. We're getting
Okay,
there.
all
This
right.
is going to be a little bit of a journey.
I love this. This is fun.
And we got 35 people that are hanging in there for the journey. So God bless you,
You guys rule.
for being that big of a bunch of
This is so nerdy.
sadists that you're gonna. All right, I will continue. Why did I bring up current, voltage, and temperature? Because these are all things that impact not only the lifetime of the capacitor, but the lifetime expectation of the capacitor in a given application. So when one of those parameters, voltage, current, or temperature, are way, way, way lower than its maximum specifications, then you can extrapolate that the capacitor lifetime will be longer.
Sure.
If you keep your proposed a salad dressing mix in the refrigerator,
Yeah.
it'll take longer to separate. If you put it in the freezer, it'll take 10 to 100 times longer than
And
to
if you
separate.
leave it out at room
If
temperature.
you put it on the counter in winter, it'll start separating in a couple of days. If you put it on the counter in summer and you don't have the AC on and your house is 100 degrees inside, it'll separate in 2 or 3 hours, okay? So
Right,
all of that
right,
stuff
right,
has to be
right,
taken
right.
into account.
Right.
Now,
Jim, the reason I'm not swigging off my martini is I am very close to being not intelligent. So I'm going really slow. Are you not drinking for the Oh, no, you finished yours finally.
now I
Yeah, I'm afraid
now I've
of drinking
officially
more at this
finished
point.
it.
I really want this, but I'm I don't know if you can tell, but I'm on the far side of buzzed.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
It's I can still
It's
track
even,
what you're
it's
saying.
even better,
but I
that
feel
we're
like
on
I'm
the
in
far
slow
side of buzz,
motion.
because we couldn't keep this up if we weren't.
Okay.
Now, to take all of those critical factors and throw them out the window and tell your customer, your amp is 10 years old, we should change the filter capacitors. And why should you change them? Because I told you you should change them, is absolute BS. And the video that I saw today where the narrator proclaimed that any of
Jim.
these capacitor reforming junkies are idiots, I'm proudly...
Did he say idiots?
He said...
Was he really derogatory?
He said reforming idiots. So, I am the king of all the reforming idiots. And
But it's
So-
so much more nuanced than
it's
that.
it's not even nuance. It's knowing
No, it
what you're
is.
talking about. And here's what we're talking about. It's science. It's chemistry. The shit works the way it works.
But it's also application.
And you can understand the nuance, you can understand the application, you can understand the science, and you can understand the application. And you have to put all four of those things together to arrive at a conclusion. And if you haven't
Right.
done that work, you have no goddamn right to go online and tell people that whoever
Well,
said
unless
something
you want a
different
big
than that.
following, then say
Yeah.
big inflammatory bullshit.
That's right, and
statements
that's
like that.
and that's clickbait at that point. So if you're looking at a video where
Right.
somebody says that, they're sucking you in on clickbait.
All right.
And I'm really on a
fair.
big rant about clickbait right now because I'm so sick of it. However,
Why?
let me wind it back a little bit
So
and
fun.
mellow out a little bit and say, from experience and from a scientific standpoint, reforming a capacitor, which is slowly applying a progressively higher and higher voltage on a capacitor that has been dormant for a long time, is not only a scientific fact, not only a proven remedy for capacitors that have been dormant for a long time, and a legitimate scientific outcome of doing that. There's no voodoo involved.
No.
Absolutely.
That's what we showed in the video. That's why we
That's
did
what
the
we
video.
showed in the video.
It's like almost
There's
2 hours
absolutely,
long.
Yeah.
There's zero
There's
voodoo.
zero voodoo, zero.
It's nothing but readings and paying attention to the meters.
That's
all it was.
That's all it was. So, now, all I'm doing in bringing that up is buttressing science with my personal experience. So here's the experience. We mentioned this in the video. The first 12150 power amps were slated to go into production in April of 1989. Our capacitor supplier informed us that
I remember April of
it's
1989.
going to be 90 days before we can ship you the capacitors that you ordered, the power supply filter capacitors that you ordered for your amplifiers. I'm already accepting orders from customers, and they're demanding delivery dates, and my ass is on the line. And I'm not waiting any 90 days to make these amplifiers, which we have the chassis, we have
Stress
the tube,
level
we have the
1 to
transformers,
10.
we have the circuit boards,
Stress
we have
level 1 to
everything.
10.
Stress level is at 20. This is not only our first production, it's my entree into manufacturing, into quality control, into...
Did you even believe you could pull this off at this point?
Hey, at that point, I didn't give a shit if I could pull it off or not. All I knew was I was already in it, and I had to get on the other side of it, and that was all there was to it. It wasn't a matter of...
There was no plan B. It was deliver.
There was no plan B.
MF.
We have
now.
plan A, B, C, D, F, G now. At that time, it was plan A, where I'm getting on my bike, and I'm going on a cross-country tour, and I'll
never come back.
I'll raise whatever money I have to raise to pay back whatever deposits that were made against those original amps, and I'm fucking out of this world because it's crazy. But it totally appealed to my sense of put up or shut up, motherfucker. It really appealed to that. And I actually went on a long motorcycle trip out into the desert and watched the sunset for a couple days and went, am I mentally and emotionally prepared for this? Because I didn't think I was. And when I decided that I was going to give it a shot, I came back and I did that. And the very first thing that happened was Fast Supply going, yeah, here's your first challenge.
Steve, answer this real fast. I think this is Scott's question. What the LC meter model is.
I don't have it here.
It's at the shop.
It's at the shop. What I will tell you is it's not a particularly great one. It's just a real generic one. So if you go online and you search LCR meters, you'll see them in the range of between $1,000 and $10,000. And the one I used in that video was about $1,500 worth.
And that does what you needed to
And
do.
by the way, that we were going to do a video, and we're still going to do a show about this with Joy Brasler and
Yes.
Stan Cody from Fender,
Yeah.
talking about cable capacitance and all that shit.
Yeah.
And Stan brought that LCR meter. It's his, actually. He brought it over.
That's his?
Yeah, he
Oh,
brought it
that's
over
funny.
for that show, which we partially filmed and didn't complete because we all got crazy busy and you know, the show format changed and all that, and we just haven't gotten back together yet to finish that, but it's partly filmed. At any rate, that's Stan's LCR meter, and he hasn't asked for it back
that's funny.
yet.
So you didn't even buy that for the shop because you don't necessarily need it for your work.
He left after we did that whole cable thing, and he said, you can mess around my LCR meter. I don't really use it that often. So
Wow.
And I said, you don't want to leave it here because you might not get it back. And he goes, oh, that'll be fine too. So I still have it. I haven't given it back to him yet because we're still planning on doing that show.
But you don't consider that essential gear for what you do on your bench?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
It's just because we're buying new parts from new suppliers, and if their parts aren't living up to their specifications, we'll see it in QC.
Yeah.
And then we'll return them back to them, and they'll replace the defective ones. And so on and
Charles,
so forth.
I want to address your question here, man. Can you address dimples on capacitors? If you watch that video that we put out today, that's like that's a big part of what we're
Okay,
talking
well,
about.
let's talk about two things. I want to mention two things. Number one, if you'll look at any capacitor these days on a circuit board, you'll see on the top of them that they have a little X indented in the top
Okay.
of the aluminum can.
Who manufactures?
Everybody
caps like
does
Okay.
this now.
Who are the major cap
Oh,
manufacturers for
geez,
amplifiers?
it's just like the
I don't even know.
these days, Nichicons,
Is
Panasonic.
Sprague still entity?
Sprague is a sub-brand of another company that makes sub-brands.
Okay.
They're not really originators of capacitor production. The big production capacitor companies are Nichicon, UCC, United Chemicon, and Panasonic, and a couple of other.
So like nothing that was in all the old shit.
No, excuse me.
Okay.
Pardon me for.
Interesting. No judgment. It's just interesting. I didn't know.
Well, they're actually so much more efficient, higher precision, longer life, and the product offering that they offer, the range of products they offer, you can pick capacitors that are designed to operate in the lowest cost, the highest reliability for cost. And these days, in the old days, you just looked for the best capacitor you could buy. These days, you buy the capacitor based on its expected lifespan, your application, and you can calculate how long it will last in the application of your product relative to the other components in your design, how long they will last, so that you can coordinate a design so that all the components in there, capacitors, resistors, chips, pots, and switches, are all in a similar lifetime window. So this is high tech.
Lifetime, but also
It's actually extremely high tech.
tolerance window.
It's targeted, and I'm going to come up with a new concept here that it's just occurring to me now, but it's really what's going on. Remember we used to say planned obsolescence?
Yeah.
This is not planned obsolescence. This is targeted obsolescence. We're making a $2,000 product that should last 20 years. And we're going to make a product that is worth $2,000 that's going to last 20 years. Or we're going to make a $200 product that's going to last 20 months. With the data that we can get from resistor, capacitor, switch, and IC manufacturers, we can target the design of the product and the components that we buy to put into it to last that period of time. And by that time, whatever other components have become obsolete, microprocessors or whatever, you can plan for all that to just go away in 5 years.
That's one aspect of evaluating these components. The other thing, like that's time that they're useful. But like one thing that I thought was fascinating from the video that we put out today was when you were, and I forget the measurement that you were taking, but you were saying that the concert, like here's the amount of like general hiss. What were you evaluating? You were saying that for your amplifiers, when you're evaluating,
Okay, I know exactly what you're talking
this
about.
is awesome.
All right, I'll get to that in just a second. But
Okay.
I got to do this.
Yeah.
Because we've been going along a long time.
Yeah.
And I think people need to hear this.
And we're drunk too.
Yeah. You what?
I'm pretty hammered right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, we're trying out a new microphone. Go, Nigel.
Yeah, Nigel, I hear you, man. I hear you. Joe gonna sleep good tonight?
None more black.
I hope.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Oh, by the way, that was my 1964 concert amp. So put that where you would like.
That concert is a different beast, man.
Let's reduce this all down to,
Are we staying on caps?
yes,
Okay.
the essence, which is anytime somebody tells you that you need to replace the capacitors and all of them in your amplifier based on an arbitrary age, they are full of it. And they can, if they don't like what I'm saying about that and have a problem with that, I invite them on the show and we'll debate it.
Oh, that would be really fun.
And
that would be really
and,
fun.
And I will win. And if I
I love you, brother.
and if I don't win, they are a fucking genius.
Then let them win. I
Then
mean,
let them
the
win.
best idea
Let them win.
Yeah, come on.
Absolutely.
Bring it.
Teach
bring
me
it.
something. I
Exactly.
want to learn a new thing. I want to know something that you know that I didn't know. I want you to open my brain.
And you're like, I'm confident.
Yeah,
bitch.
bring it.
Bring it.
Bring it, bitch. Bring it.
And if you beat me, then that's fair and
then
square.
you did fair and square.
Rob, what's up, man?
Hey.
That's a nice compliment.
What did you say? I've never.
I'll learn more about electronics than when I'm listening to Steve.
Rob, you're a sweetheart. I love you, man. I wish
to
you would.
Rob.
I wish you would move back to L.A.
Not only cheers to Rob, but also to Tessie Switch.
We
to
need you
Dominic
here. And
Miller.
by the way, Rob, I've been watching the economy in Nashville, and it's about time for you to move back, pal. I mean, there's no benefit to be there anymore. Come on back. Come on back to LA where we love you and need you. Another quick thing, we were using wireless mics before. We're trying the new Rode shotgun mic on the show this time, and we sort of changed the parameters a little bit. So if it sounds good to you, or if it sounds weak, or it sounds any way different, please feel free to bitch us out and let us know that we either did something right or we fucked up.
I think we've made it clear on this show that we need help wherever we can get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Peanut Gallery, any comments, criticisms, let her rip. We're just trying to make the show better,
Yeah.
more informative, more interesting.
So we could
all
go
the
on
above.
and on and on and on about capacitors and all other things related to amplifiers. But let me just summarize it this way. The behavior and the operational characteristics of a capacitor are unique to their design, and in different products, those parts are designed to operate in those products a certain way. And you had mentioned earlier about that I said your amplifier should be good for not turning it on for 2 years and it'll be fine. And when you flipped that back to me, I sort of balked. Why did I balk? I balked because in your absolute particular application, that is true. In another application, it's not true. And that's the key application. For example, there is a scientific document that's available online that you can find it. Just look up capacitor, aluminum, Google search aluminum electrolytic capacitor reforming, and you'll find a long document. It describes how and why you would reform capacitors. And this is not anything to do with guitar amplifiers. This is to do with industrial applications.
Sure.
Why is that different? Why is that important? In this particular industrial application, they're talking about running the capacitor at maximum voltage, current, and temperature.
Right.
And they're
What the
saying
hell is
under
it in?
those conditions, you would want to not leave that equipment inoperable for 6 months. If you did, then you would want to reform the capacitor. You would want to be able to go through that process to reform those capacitors. And why would you do that? You would do that when you're an engineer and a scientist interfacing with a bean counter in your company, and you just make this calculation. We will spend X hours with X amount of labor and X amount of equipment that we would have to buy to reform X number of capacitors in this application.
Right.
It will cost us X amount of dollars.
Who in the hell in any sort of company is going to have any sort of idea?
Telecommunications, military applications.
Who uses capacitors like that these days?
Military applications, high computer applications where there's servers in Switzerland that are operating 24/7, at maximum capacity. Those kind of applications, you will have a team, an engineering team, that will say to the management team, we're going to spend $10,000 replacing power supply capacitors. We're going to spend $8,000 reforming them. We're going to spend $10,000 replacing all the filter capacitors in these equipment that operates 24/7, or we're going to spend $12,000 reforming capacitors. That's the calculation that you make.
Sure.
When it's scientific and focused like that, then you've got management going, we want to save $2,000, we'll buy all the new caps. We're going to save $2,000, we want to reform them. Right. In their specific application, they're going to make one or the other deduction.
Let's stick to guitar.
But in guitar amplifiers, all bets are off, because there's guys on the internet going, well, I looked at the specs and it said 3,000 hours, and you should just get rid of them. Those guys are not doing the science. They're not pulling out their calculator. They're not spending a half an hour learning what they're talking about. And they're making a calculation to you that you should do this because of that, when what it really boils down to is they want you to buy their service.
See, and that's where I disagree with you. I don't think it's necessarily always just that. Although you, having been a tech and paying your bills with that and knowing other techs, you would know that better than I. But with the people that I knew, when I was ignorant about this stuff, it wasn't really about that. It wasn't people making their living being techs. It was just more a matter of erasing all nuance and not thinking about, well, wait a minute. Is there, a situation where you don't necessarily have to replace all these, right? And again, I described earlier on in the show about why I did. And actually, it's funny, when it came out of my mouth, I thought, it wasn't like my reasoning was ridiculous. It's just that I didn't have access to all the nuance that I could have. That you're actually responsible for introducing me to.
Sorry. My sincere apologies.
Joe's going to have nightmares of capacitors and martinis. Absolutely.
More the merrier.
Said context is king. How do you say your name, dude? Like, you comment a lot, and I want to be able to say your name, but
dude,
I'm not sure.
in every conversation about any subject, context is absolutely king.
Totally.
You are the man. That is so true.
And Scott, where's Nico-chan? Nico-chan made us all of these drinks that have us operating in an alternate state of reality right now. Nico-chan is alive and well and orbiting our universe right now.
Yeah, the only problem is that we haven't said that we've finished this, we want to try something else. But we've been going on a little while.
I know. So let's talk about that concert a little bit.
Okay.
The meat and potatoes of the operation of determining reforming the caps, and also determining whether or not Steve wanted to replace the caps in the amplifier, is all contained in this video that I believe was like an hour and 42 minutes long. I know it's long, but you know, if you guys are geeky enough to hang out on the show, I think you'll get a lot out of that video. And what I love about that video is not only like the real world, here's what it looks like when an amp is on the bench and you're taking these readings and you're poking around in an amp and you're going, oh wait, I missed that terminal. And like, this was the stuff that, it's like, I don't know, just seeing a pro at work. I'm not trying to polish your boots or anything, but like, man, I would have died for this kind of stuff when I was poking around in amps, you know, when I was in my early 20s. I think this is so useful. But one thing that I love about this video is that
learn.
Let me just say this.
Every day that I do that, I have somebody like you watching over me while I'm doing it. I do this thing in my head where, dude, you better have your fucking feet on the ground and your shit together, because...
But man, you keep talking throughout the entire video. And I'm thinking to myself, if I was doing this, I would have to go internal. And I wouldn't be talking because I'd be thinking like, wait a minute. I would have to be like making sure that I knew what the hell I was doing. You're able to narrate during, like, that's an hour and 42 minutes, and I cut the shit out of that video.
I was going to say, yeah, it's about a half an hour too long, but at least. But
like, everything that I left in there is there's reasons for it to be in there. And
reason to exist.
Yeah.
Don't you hate that?
No, I love it, actually, because it's really important to live by. But what was I going to say? I'm sorry, guys. I'm like way too much Martini and gimlet.
Besides, we got this.
Here's what I was getting at was the meat and potatoes of kind of what we're talking about in terms of the technical, what was going on behind the scenes with deciding whether or not to replace the caps. And the philosophy behind it is contained in that video, because it is context dependent. And it was interesting listening to you talk about it while you were going through reforming the caps, because I thought, you know what? You have a strong point, and I could have considered that at the time that, you know, I was replacing all of the caps in my vintage 65 Deluxe Reverb, or I've owned, this is funny, I've owned two 68 Super Reverbs, but the current one that I have, which you opened up, and we'll have video of that at a later date. But I still think the reasons that I replaced things were valid because of my application. At the time that I was doing that, I was a dude who was gigging like ridiculous. You know, 5-6 nights a week, you know, multiple sets and that sort of thing. And I, like, reliability was kind of at the top of my list. You know, I would be in the studio with these amplifiers, right? And, you know, if somebody puts a mic in front of it and it's motorboating, they're gonna, you know, like the last thing I wanted on a session was like this added insecurity of like, oh shit, my gear is doing funny stuff, you know. It's like, I loved Fender amplifiers so much, in the old stuff, the blackface stuff in particular, but I just needed it to be quiet and not do funky stuff. So
like
I
this?
think. No, turn it back on the mic and then listen how quiet it is.
That was
silent.
That's the speaker out of the amp into the power load directly into the stream. After we did this whole video about the capacitors and the noise level, this is the.
But this is everything is stock.
This is the
stock capacitors.
This is the 64 Concert cranked into the power load into the stream. Oh, I forgot to mention I had a little boost going on there too. This is without the boost.
See.
Okay, I just needed to do that to get it out of my system. Sorry.
Okay. Do you want
Back to
to
the
talk about that
subject.
concert now? Because I have opinions about it.
Let's hear your opinion. Let me just say one thing before
Yeah.
we get into your opinion.
Yeah.
Is
It's not cranked, Rob. It's not cranked.
It's-
What's it at?
I'm in the normal channel, 5, 9, and 3. And it's got, well, it doesn't matter what speakers because I'm going into the power load, but it has the original Oxford speakers in it. And then the other thing I wanted to say was, we're doing the show a little differently. We've got this Rode shotgun mic that we're trying. So if it sounds good, let us know. We were using the wireless mics before, and the problem with the wireless mics, they worked really well and they were reliable, but every time we would like suck on a drink, you would hear the drink gurgling down our throat, and we thought that was particularly annoying. So we thought we would try to abate that by using a microphone that didn't do that. So if this worked better for you, we'd like to hear about it. Thank you.
And guys, the whole point of this show, like, we want to make it better all of the time. So any criticisms you have, both of us have pretty thick skin by this point. So like, let her rip. We just want to make it better for you guys. I know.
Thank you,
like,
Brandon. By the
right
way.
now, we're kind of inebriated. So
Thank you, BMO.
yeah, without the boost, it's pretty clean.
Thank you, Rob.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I could turn it up. I could turn it up more, but the thing about boosting it was the boost has a low end roll off. So just turning the amp up to 10, especially a Fender amp, sounds a little ratty on the bottom end. But when you run it at a normal gain level and then run a boost that rolls off the low end, then you get that.
But
that
let's
shred.
talk about that, because this concert is a different animal.
That's true.
So our original idea when we were doing the show, we were going to make it.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. Thanks, Wayne.
Absolutely.
Thank you, BMO.
I wanted to say that when we talked about this episode, we originally thought we'd incorporate another piece, which was, he has a 64 Concert over here, obviously, but I own a 68 Super Reverb. And we originally thought that we would not only talk about reforming the caps on the Concert, but we would also compare and contrast the Super Reverb. But once we kind of got into it and got under the hood, we thought that that would maybe be too much for one episode. But we can refer to the Super and other blackface Fenders in discussing the character of this concert, because like even now, like when I first played through this amplifier, I thought the same thing that I'm thinking now, even through the load and the PLIR, which is it's not what I'm used to from the typical blackface Fender.
I agree. And by the way, Scott, thanks. I actually have a tablet, and it never occurred to me. See, sometimes you just got to go to somebody and go, "Hey, dude, wake up." So thank you for that. Anyway, back to.
Well, it's very instructive to me thinking that you went, this was the amplifier that you were really cutting your teeth on.
See, but this is like total. What's the word? Kismet, not coincidence. Mm-hmm. I got this amp because my brother had it. I kept it because it was in the family. It didn't occur to me until years and years and years later that it was a unique amplifier.
It is unique within the black Fenders.
Among the black Fenders, and especially people think of it as, oh, it's the Super Reverb without the reverb. It is absolutely
that
not
is
that. Not only did I learn that over the course of time, but that realization was really pounded home in the last couple of weeks, and especially last week when Joe was putting his Super Reverb in the car. We had them both on a dolly, one to put in my car and one to put in his.
Isn't that
we had
funny?
it side by side, and it was like Joe's going, "Wait a minute! The concert is an inch less wide than the Super Reverb."
Yeah, I was just looking at the chassis, and then I was looking at the cabinets. I'm like, wait a minute, dude.
And what's
Wait a minute. I think we loaded your amp into the back of your car. Like, wait a minute, pull that back out.
Wait.
Like, set it down.
And we're on the parking lot going, somebody's fucking with us. It's the dark web, dude. What?
You were totally geeking
And
out
on top of that, the drip edge,
yes,
Super, which you have, has that blue, the psychedelic sort of textured front panel,
blue on the silver panel
with the blue silkscreen on it, and then there's these black lines separating the control channels.
Stupid.
And I'm looking at that going, you know what? Knowing what I know now about production, and knowing what I know about bean counters coming into Fender and going, all right, we're going to lower the standards so that we can pound out way more fucking shit. I looked at that and I went, those black vertical lines that separate the control areas, the clean channel from the reverb channel, from the input stage and to where the logo is, there are these vertical black lines that don't have any logical reason to exist. And I was thinking,
well, you pointed it out.
I get it. They compartmentalize the panel on the graphic arts side of it, but somebody left those black vertical lines in the artwork and printed the front panels that way. And how I that I think that that was a big boo-boo that they made at the factory and didn't give a shit about. How I arrived at that was the last knob on the right before where the logo and the model name are. Yeah. The knob is overlapping the black line. The black line.
It's so dumb looking. And I never paid attention to it until
look
you
at it next time. It'll drive you nuts.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, they didn't even line it up.
When we bring that amp in here and we'll take a picture of it and show everybody. But my amp, by the way, is I dated it. It's the second week of April of '68, which this is so geeky. You want to talk about like A-level geekery? It's like, wow, that's the week after MLK was assassinated. Like that's what was in the air at the time that this amp was built.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Get them the hell out of the door.
Like wow,
And you read stories about the production guys going, "Oh, Leo would never have settled for this," and that's true.
But the thing is, that particular amp, second week of '68, the first changes, other than cosmetic, like this amplifier that I have, has the drip edge, has the stupid silver panel on the front. At the back is the black panel on the back panel. But none of the circuitry changes started to happen until the very tail end of April of '68. So my amp just missed that stuff. So mine is essentially, a blackface amp circuitry-wise and everything that you would hear tonally. It's got the original speakers, all that stuff. I've beat the shit out of that amplifier. I beat the shit out of that amplifier. You've come to gigs. What did you tell me? You were like, man, you were making that thing gargle. What did you say? Some sort of sink cleaner or something? Gargle.
Oh, Drano.
Yeah.
The gargling Drano sound.
You got some tones and like gargling Drano.
that was from Dirty Harry.
Yeah, but man, when you told me that, I was like, that's a fucking compliment. Right, man. Super reverb.
Yeah, you're playing a gig, and I went, "Yeah, you sound like you're reminding me of that Dirty Harry movie."
Because I was just stuffing some fuzz into the front of that fucker.
Sounds like garbling
eat this thing. But anyway, I love that amp to death, and I know it inside and out. I know how it feels and sounds at every stop on the dial, and it couldn't be any more different from this concert. And what I was telling Steve tonight, before we even went live, was that for about 5 minutes in my life, I owned a brown Fender from like 1962, a brown Fender Concert with that harmonic tremolo. Ooh, man, was that thing hypnotic. Fucking cool amp. But when I play your concert, I'm like, oh, it's that brown Concert. And what I think of is I keep wanting to say constrained, but that's the wrong word because it rocks. But the bottom end stays, I don't want to say tight, but it is tight. Like the whole thing kind of stays together in a way that the other blackface amplifiers, I've owned a Champ, I've owned a Princeton, I own a Deluxe, I've owned a Super Reverb, I own a Pro. They don't do what that amplifier does.
And I came to realize
that takes you to high watt territory.
I came to realize that over time I was informed by this amp that I thought was a Fender amp that I later discovered is an anomaly of a Fender amp. And that's what led me to the development of the stuff that we make now, because I transitioned from this to a high watt 50 and found them to be sort of like kindred amplifiers. And that's what I understood about Fender at the time, until I played a Fender that everybody else is playing, and I went, what the hell just happened here?
That is unlike any other blackface. I've owned almost all of them. Oh, I own a twin. I owned a twin too.
And I would go see guys playing gigs with twins, and I'm like, what?
What the fuck is that thing?
What is going on here? And it took me a long time to realize that this is a unique thing in the pantheon of Fender amps.
It stays more cohesive. The bottom end is different, but here's the thing. The mid-range isn't as sweet as most other blackface Fenders. It's not like the gorgeous clean machine.
No, it's not.
That the other
it's not. It's the bark. It's the bark.
It's got that bark.
And I learned the bark
translates to the high watts.
I learned the bark. I learned that amplifiers have this bark from buying this amp for my brother, being my first amplifier experience. I learned that amplifiers bark, and amplifiers that didn't have that sound weren't right.
Oh. Well,
and then when I discovered the high watt, and the Oxford speakers were different. When I listened to a Super Reverb, it was like, no.
Super has the stock CTS in there.
Yeah.
And my original 65 Deluxe Reverb originally had an Oxford in there, and that speaker was a badass.
So for a long time, that's what I thought a Fender amp was, until I heard what everybody else thinks a Fender amp is, and I went, I got derailed somehow.
You did, because you had the one anomaly in the whole line.
I'm going to push this button, and the microphone isn't going to work for. This is the amp turned all the way up to 10 now. With no boost.
Reverb would do.
Right.
And a super would be farting all over the
Now
place.
with the boost on.
Hold on, play this sucker.
I honestly am so blown away how that
Sounds so good.
how that thing sounded with the boost, with the amp dime
I need that boost, brother.
on that AC/DC vibe. Here we go. That is not a Fender sound.
Hey, Steve.
What?
I love your playing.
That's
man.
not a Fender motherfucker sound.
It's just not.
It's just not.
It's not. Simon.
But it is the sound of that amp.
Hold on. Simon, thanks for coming
Simon.
in, man.
Dude, nice to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
Simon's the man. We gotta play together, or collab on something, dude. Simon's my brother. This amp is like, now, it's not an either or.
No.
I cut
It's
my
what it
teeth
is. It's
on
totally what it
black-face
is.
Fenders.
It's what it
I
is.
own 2 of them. They're like at the bedrock of my shit. I love them so much. But I more think about, like, I'm surprised when I listen to you play through this, but
I'm surprised. This
You're
is the first time
surprised?
I've really nailed into it for a long, long
that's
time.
right. You haven't turned it on in 20 years.
Yeah.
But doesn't it make sense when you listen to it?
Well,
like,
what it
oh,
does
yeah,
is it reminds
this turned
me-
into the high watts, and the high watts turned into VHT, and the VHT turned into the Fryette.
It reminds me
Right.
of it. It's almost like I dropped my wallet out of my pocket, out of my back pocket, and I picked up my wallet and I opened it up. And I dropped my wallet, and I looked at my picture and I go, oh, that's me. And yeah, that's all my information. It's all correct.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't really think about, is all the information in my wallet valid or the most updated stuff? But I look at it and I go, oh yeah, that's me. That's all correct. That's all correct. I'm like, well, that's really normal. But when I do that on this amp and I play through it, I've had this amp since 1968. And every time I play through it, I go,
64 concert. It's a 64.
I just go, oh my God, it reminded me, how can you have a Fender amp? This is the thing. How can you have a Fender amp that's the foundation of everything that you know about and think about how to develop a sound and enhance that and expand upon that, and then in the same breath go, but it doesn't sound like any of those other Fender amps.
Well, you know what's interesting to me is like, think about you and Randy, right?
Same as drum sounds, exactly. And having been a drummer, I totally agree with you.
It's true. But think about this for a minute. You and Randy, right?
Randall Smith,
Yeah.
who plays clarinet, by the way.
But you guys are both coming from the Fender DNA at your deepest, right?
Yeah, and what Randy did
the
was
Mark
was
I's were Princeton's.
maximize what the Fender DNA and platform could evolve into.
But it was coming from a Princeton, and a Princeton behaves like a more of a typical blackface Fender. Everything that I'm used to, right? When I play a Princeton, I get that amplifier. Mm-hmm. You wound up with this concert, which was like just completely serendipitous.
Absolutely. Yeah, my brother's going, yeah, I'm not going to play an amp anymore. Here, you can have my Fender amp. Oh, it's a Fender amp. Wait a minute. Wait.
And he happened to have this freaking concert. And again, did I mention this before? Or am I so drunk? Like, I had that brown, the brown concert.
All right.
And it's funny, when I first played your blackface concert, I went, I know what this amp reminds me of. It's that brown concert I had for 5
Isn't that
minutes.
funny? Because before that, you thought, well, this was that amp except with brown vinyl on the outside. And then you go, wait. A whole lot of things happened between the black vinyl and the brown vinyl and the black vinyl.
You know, I haven't played too many brown amps.
And the other thing
that's the only one that I owned was a brown concert. And I owned it because it had that harmonic tremolo. It was like kind of like a junior univibe. You know?
Uh-huh.
It was beautiful. It's a gorgeous sound.
The other thing that I think is wonderful is that
Simon, you're totally right.
the speaker thing with Fender, and we talked about this with necks and bodies and stuff like that. A lot of the times it was, what's available for the cheapest price today?
Totally.
And
oh shit, we have too many of these. Put those on that.
And well, you know, the Oxford speakers were this era, and then they changed because, and then people assign totally arbitrary values to why the CTS speakers or the Eminence speakers or whatever that changed to were changed, and probably 90% of it was well the Oxford went out of business, and the CTS speakers were available, and they were not only that, but they were $3.50 less per unit.
Though? My 65 Deluxe Reverb, the stock speaker in there was an Oxford. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I bought that amp, and actually, maybe I should tell this story.
Everybody snagged on you about how lame Oxford speakers were?
Okay, yeah. This is fun. This is my Deluxe Reverb story. So I started teaching.
How come you have a Martini and I don't?
This is my second.
How come you have your second Martini and I only have my first?
I don't know, but I'm
okay,
afraid because I'm loaded.
Okay, great. Well, we have a spare bedroom.
So, that's good. I may need a pit stop, brother. So my Deluxe Reverb, I was teaching at this guitar store, and I didn't know anything about vintage amplifiers. But I was just trying to learn to play well, and I would read, all the guitar magazines. And Eric Johnson was on my radar. And, he was talking about, I have this rig that's like the vintage Marshalls and the Dumble and the blackface Fenders. And so I started paying attention to, blackface Fender, what is that? Okay, I think I understand what that is. And then I hooked up with Steve Mesplay, who owns Wildwood Guitars in Louisville, Colorado. I'm sure some of you guys know that shop. But Steve was really gracious to me, and he let me come over to his house a ton. And like in his basement, he had like everything. This was in the '90s. He had like 3 or 4 dumbbells. He had Plexi 100 watts. He had Plexi 50 watt. He had Vox AC30, AC15s. He had black face fenders. He had brown face fenders. He had tweed fenders. Like everything. If you were like wanting to learn about, the major sounds in, electric guitar, he had all of the stuff, and he would let me come over and play through them all. And this is where I got educated on this stuff. Oh, that's how you run a 100 watt Marshall Plexi. Oh, that's the difference between a 50 watt and a 100 watt. Oh man, those AC15s really kill when you crank the shit out of them, And I remember going through, like, stepping it up all through the blackface line and going, you know what? The deluxe reverb, like, it's smaller than a twin reverb, which he had. Or it's smaller than a super reverb. It's smaller than a pro reverb. But man, it's the most balanced sounding of them all. I want one of those damn things. And then I remembered the guy who owned the shop that I taught at, Herb Sparks. Shout out to Herb. I love Herb. I was like, wait a minute. I think Herb told me that he had an old deluxe reverb. So I remember going in, like the next day and being like, hey, you ever think of selling that amp? Do you have a deluxe reverb? You ever think of selling that? He's like, no, I'll never sell that thing. And then I remember I went to my bank and I pulled out, this was in 1996. I pulled out of my bank, I pulled out $1,000 cash. I remember I walked into his office. I'm not shitting you. This is my story. I walked in and I went, Herb, I want your deluxe reverb. He's like, no way. I'm like, okay. And I pulled out my envelope with $1,000 cash and I laid it out on his desk. $1,000. And he looked at it. And he scooped it all up and he went, all right, I'll bring it in tomorrow.
He didn't even give it back $200. What a slime.
Well, actually, if this was 96, it was 95. Probably $800. But this thing was fucking mint. So he brought in my deluxe reverb, 65 deluxe reverb, and it was mint. And I remember he told me he actually bought it from a woman who it had been in her basement. Actually, it wasn't mint because there was a flood in the basement.
That's
and
even
the
better.
Toe licks on the bottom was a little funky. But all the electronics, everything was mint. And so that is my deluxe reverb. I still own it to this day. And it had an Oxford in there. And I remember like, okay, now I bought my deluxe reverb for $1,000. All right, and then let me look at it. Let me open it up. Let me look at all the date codes. Let me find out,
Nothing
I'm
beats
a
the
nerd.
story by having the tinkling of the drink stirring going on while you're telling it.
I love that. And by the way, I forget who asked earlier, where's Nico-chan? This is Nico-chan. All the tinkling and awesomeness is coming from Nico-chan.
And she'll be back in a second.
So this is what I remember, Steve, was playing this amplifier and going, I love this thing so much. Okay, what is this speaker? This is an Oxford. And then I went and, this was in the 90s. Like, there was no internet at the time. And it's funny because I'm thinking like, where did I get this information from? But I remember finding out, oh, Oxfords are not the desired speakers.
Because it doesn't fit into the...
But here's the thing.
It doesn't fit into the Fender sound narrative thing.
But here's the thing. Playing that amplifier, I'm like, I don't get it. This thing kills.
They were a low-cost Alnico speaker that it was just available at the time.
But it sounds great.
It sounds great.
And
anybody that says, "Oh yeah, the Oxford speaker, the Oxford speaker doesn't have the ratty top
not the
end and the
super
flubby
top-
bottom end
Okay.
of the stock Fender speaker. What it has is that nice mid-range bark and
It did.
detail
It did.
without being annoying.
Now, I have to say, that's not the speaker that's in my amplifier now.
Well, we can fix that
Well, but here's the funny thing.
because it's round. There's a lot of stuff that's round.
the speaker that's in there now, you put in there. I don't know if you remember this. But actually,
Well, I didn't replace the Oxford.
no, you didn't.
Thank you
because
very much.
I bought a 64 deluxe reverb. I actually own 2 deluxe reverb. Hey, what's up?
Thank you, Nichuk John. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're wonderful. Are you drunk? No, you need to drink a little bit more.
I will.
Okay. Will you have a martini? Or will you have your normal Jack Daniels? Oh, you'll have the Roku.
Look, we got an inch of Roku left.
Okay.
No,
I think
It's
you need to
gone.
cash
Oh,
that.
it's gone?
it's gone. You guys drink.
Did we
up.
cash the Roku?
We cashed
Dude.
Roku. Wow, you guys. You put up with all this. So all you people hung out here and put up through all this and watched us completely murder an entire...
3 hours. 3 hours.
I'm having so much fun.
I hope you guys are having a great time because we're having a
I'm
blast.
having fun remembering my deluxe reverb story. So I own my deluxe, my 65 deluxe that I got from Herb. I bought a 64 deluxe, which was the first year that they produced the deluxe.
Would you taste this? Because this is a wicked one. Am I wrong?
Oh, that's beautiful.
It's perfectly balanced.
Actually, that's perfect. You know what this is? This is a deluxe reverb. Which is what I always think of in terms of the blackface amplifiers. It's the most balanced of them all.
I'm having so much fun learning about your evolution with amplifiers and
cool.
evolving into martinis and grokking martinis and olives and all of this stuff. I can hardly wait to get back to margaritas, but this whole thing with martinis and gimlets has been a godsend.
Well, isn't this fun
and
to
having
realize?
this conversation has been
Yeah.
killer.
Isn't it fun to learn that like a martini is amazing and still know that your favorite margarita is still there whenever you want it and all the variations of that?
You know why?
Oh my God, life is
You know why?
amazing,
Because you
guys.
can drink 5 martinis and then wake up in the morning and go, I know what the fix for this will be. And you go make yourself a nice margarita. and some and an omelet with chili peppers.
Oh my God, I want an omelet with chili peppers right now.
And you're good to go,
Oh
right?
my God.
Am I right? Am I right? Am I right?
Oh man. I'm having, like, I know I'm inebriated, but I'm having so much fun right now. Like, drinking and talking about the
Amanda, I agree
stuff.
with you. I've been having a killer time. And
John,
having
you need a
having you
drink?
people here has
John,
been making it worth
you're
all.
one of the baddest motherfuckers to ever touch a guitar, dude.
Yeah, you do need
That's
a gig.
true.
We have a guy here, John Ziegler, in the comics list. John,
There's a lot of killing guitar players in here, and John's one of them.
and John is one of them.
John is so sick.
a sick ass guitar player.
And so let me talk about John a little bit.
Please do.
Because when I first got to LA, John was actually, John, I don't even know if you know this. You were the first dude that I met in town in LA.
I know the story, and so I'm going to take this opportunity to.
You need to pee?
Yeah, I'll be right back.
I think I've peed 3 times.
Right back.
John, you were the first like cat that I met in LA when I moved here, and I went to your jam that you were running. And by the way, John, I don't know how many years you ran it. It was over a decade, and I know this because I was at the celebration to like the 10-year anniversary of the Monday Night Jam. You should chime in and tell me how many years you guys ran that. You and Jamie Kime, who's another intensely sick guitar player. But like the first week that I moved to LA, I didn't know a soul. I didn't know anyone. And I showed up to the Baked Potato Jam because, you know, growing up being a fan of killing guitar players, I knew like LA, like where do you go to see people play great? You go to the Baked Potato. So I go to the Baked Potato and on a Monday night, and for over 10 years, John Ziegler and Jamie Kime, they co-led the Baked Potato Jam, where anybody could come and sit in. And like so many friendships and musical partnerships were formed at that thing. Like an amazing event. But I remember I showed up and I watched the first set, and the first set was always John and Jamie and Chris Roy on bass, who's just another MF and like one of the coolest people in the world. And then they would call like any number of just the sickest drummers in the periphery of LA. Like I saw so many incredible drummers in the opening set of that, the Baked Potato Jam. Like, let me think of guys who I saw play there. Like Joel Taylor, who was Alan Holdsworth's drummer, Danny Carey from Tool, Matt Garska from Animals as leaders. And I'm drunk right now, so I can't come up with everybody, but like local dudes that not a lot of people know who are just as great as anybody who's like famous. But anyhow, I walk in almost 15 years, man. And John, thank you for doing that, man.
I think I met John John, correct me if I'm wrong, but did I not meet you doing the Bud Girls gig?
What's that?
There was this guy that had a contract with Budweiser. And he put together this band. This guy's this like total redneck guy, total redneck beer drinking guy. Put together this concept called the Bud Girls. And there are all these masculine big beer drinkers that dress like women, and they had a band called the Bud Girls. And they did a whole Budweiser promotion with these guys with dresses and wigs, but he's got this big handlebar mustache.
Was John in it?
No, John wasn't in it. I think that he was working as the guitar tech for the guitar player in the Bud Girls.
Interesting.
And the guy, they were getting ready to do a big promotion to put together a Bud Girls party album. They had been doing commercials.
Yeah.
And they would go to sports bars across the country.
Chris Johnson, does that ring a bell?
I wasn't Chris
You were
Johnson.
very fortunate. Well, John, LA was very fortunate to have you doing that jam, dude.
Yeah, it was really great, and
you need to come back.
And the Bud Girls needed a guitar player because the guitar player that they had, well, the main guy that was running the Bud Girls, he was a singer and a guitar player and a very good guitar player, but they had another guitar player as a rhythm guy that couldn't make the gig, and they had a showcase for the Budweiser company at the place in Hollywood that used to be forget the name of the club.
Chris Johnson owns Hollywood Studio Rentals now.
Do
you want more water?
Sure. Anyway, there was this big club in Hollywood where they did this showcase where they were going to do a Bud Girls album. It was going to be a party record that Walmart was going to distribute for Budweiser. And they were going to sell millions of copies. It was going to be a party record. And they did Wooly Bully and all these just like drink a lot of beer and get stupid and party songs. And I loved Wooly Bully. I love that song. To this day, it's one of my favorite songs. And he said that they were looking for a guitar player and he told me that what they were doing. They were in this concept, blah, 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 backup band, and we need a guitar player, and we're doing all these songs. And the minute he said, we're doing Wooly Bully, I went, okay, I know the guy.
Oh.
I didn't say, I'll do it. I said, I know the guy.
Oh, that's interesting.
And he said, okay, give him the address. This is the rehearsal, the next rehearsal, the date, and the location. Just give them to him and tell him to show up.
Give
and
it
I
to
went,
him.
I went, okay,
No problem.
no problem.
See you then. Wink, wink.
Not only did I show up unannounced, but I had just finished the prototype of the Pitbull 5012 112 combo.
Crap. Wow.
So I brought that with me. And the guys in the band were like, when I walked in, he goes, you? And I went, hey, if you hate me, kick me out. I'll happily drive home.
But let's play.
And we played a couple of songs. He goes, motherfucker, you're in.
Exactly.
And he says, and what is that amp you're playing through? Because he had the reason that I hooked up with him is because he brought an amp in to get fixed, and he had a Pitbull 45. He brought that in, and I
That's
fixed it
crazy.
for him. And
Wow.
he left, and I said, I'm working on a new amp. And he goes, oh, yeah, cool. He left. He didn't care. And I showed up, and he goes, that sounds great. What's that? And I said, that's the new model. He says, when did that come out? And I said, just now. And he was like, the rest of the guys in the band going, what do you mean just now? I just finished it today. I'm trying it out now. And they're like going,
Wow.
get the fuck out of here. So
Wow.
we played a couple of songs, and they go, you're in. And then we went down to to this club in Hollywood and did this showcase where a Budweiser showcase, all right? Where I went to the bar and promptly ordered a Pabst Blue Ribbon.
That is a conflict of interest.
and the main guy comes up and he goes, what the fuck are you doing? And I said, what do you mean, what am I doing? He goes, this is a Budweiser showcase. And I go, yeah. He says, and you're drinking a motherfucking Pabst Blue Ribbon. And so I pulled the line.
Like, I'm a malcontent.
I pulled the line from Blue Velvet.
Wait, I think I know the one.
I went, Budweiser, fuck that shit, Pabst Blue Ribbon. And he's like going, you go in the fucking dressing room and you hide until the set, we're ready to go on set, and keep your fucking mouth shut. And so that's what I did, and we went and played the showcase, and all these people from Budweiser promotion department were like, yeah, it sounds pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. And then they went, nah. But what I learned is that what they did, they actually had this Bud Girls promotion. And what they did was they had this 5-piece band with background singers that were all these big buff sports guys dressed like women.
Oh my God.
And they would just drive in to Indianapolis at the most popular sports bar in Indianapolis. They would just roll in the middle of whatever was going on and roll their shit up on stage and start playing to all these hammered sports guys in Indianapolis, and they would play their set. And the more drunk the guys in the audience got, the more they started hitting on the girls in the band. And he said, if you're going to be in this band, you just got to be prepared, because these big fucking bruisers are going to try to jump on your bones, and we're going to have security. It's going to be cool. And I'm like going, oh man, I'm totally down for this. Sign me up, sign me up.
Man. Well,
but then the promotion didn't happen, and Walmart looked at the videos and they went, no.
Well, I just want to finish telling the story.
All right, I'll bug out.
Ziegler.
I was just saying that's where I think that's where I met Ziegler. You were doing tech for them.
Well, so Ziegler is like, when I think of him, like this is really weird to say on camera, bro, John, and again I'm almost drunk. Like, John was a guy who he's not from LA. I think he grew up in New Jersey, moved to Houston area, came to LA. But John was like an aggregator dude, ridiculous fucking great guitar player. But he knew, like, he ran this jam in LA and knew like almost every guitar player. Like this aggregator dude, like you come together through John almost like.
And he also played.
John.
He also played in Pygmy Love Circus, which is an amazing band.
But John,
and by the way, John, you just posted that. By the way, I'd had a stroke, and we know you had a stroke.
Right. Totally.
I came to the hospital when you were a couple of days after you had the stroke. I came to the hospital. I was there. So yes, we know.
And we love you, man.
And we love you, man. And that's why I'm so glad that you're here.
Exactly.
It's because you're here.
Yeah, we love you, man.
And that's the best.
And
you'll play again.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to come over and kick your ass if you don't.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. But I'm wanting to talk about, like, what John kind of, like, again, I moved to LA not knowing a soul. But I remember I think I must have posted some shit on the gear page, like some playing or something. Because John knew who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing was, the first week I moved to town, I went to the Baked Potato to John's jam. I'm sitting there and I watched the opening band, John, Jamie. No, it wasn't Jamie actually. It was a sub guitar player.
But you see like guys like Danny DeVito and shit in the audience and like
Totally.
yeah.
But here's the thing. After the opening set, guys get up and jam. And I didn't bring my guitar that night. I just wanted to come and observe. But I'm sitting there and I watched a couple like bands get up and jam, and I'm like, okay, I understand what this is about. I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna bounce. I'll come back and play later. But I'm sitting there watching, and then Ziegler comes out, and he's like sitting like at another table. And he leans over and he's like, "Hey man, you Joe Gamble?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, you know me?
How do you know my name?
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "Dude, you play great." I was like, "Really? Like, thanks." He's like, "Dude, come here." And the thing is, at the Baked Potato, like, you know, there's where everybody's playing, and actually the Baked Potato's kind of changed. They've changed the structure of it now. They've kind of like built a structure over that back patio. But at the time, it was just all open.
But it's still
But the thing was, it was a little bit
it's
like...
still a slimy, broken down fucking beer bar, no matter how you dress it up.
It's beautiful. But John said, like, on my first week that I was here, he was like, "Dude, like, you can play, man." He was like, "Come here." And he brought me into the back, and he started introducing me to everybody.
Yeah.
And that's who John is. He was like, "Dude, that's who this is. Hey, this guy plays with so-and-so. This guy plays with so-and-so. Oh, you need to know so-and-so." And I remember he asked me, he's like, "How old are you, man?" And when I told him, he's like, "Okay, that's cool because LA's not going to change you." He's like, "You're old enough, like..." And he was telling me, he's like, "Yeah, I got here later too." He's like, "You know, like, it's not going to corrupt you." Right. Exactly, John. But that meant a lot to me, dude. John, and you know, we've had a lot of interactions since, but it was like, man, what a kind thing for you to do. Like, that was, I don't know if you remember that or anything, but it was my first week in town. I didn't know anybody, and you were like, "No, dude, you can play. Come in the back. I want to introduce you to people and get you started." And I remember, I think I told you about this last week. The end of the night, I was standing there in the parking lot with Phil Suzanne, who is the bass player for Ozzy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm from Denver, man. Like, I'm out there with Phil, and Phil's like talking to me about all his new stuff and playing me demos on his iPhone, asking me for my opinion. I'm like, okay, I just got off the boat, and Ozzy's bass player is asking me for my opinions on his demos.
But here's the thing, dude. How I met Joe is we have a Japanese distributor. It's been our same Japanese client that sells our product in Japan since we started. When that company in Japan started was the same year we started. So we've been with them for over 30 years. And they have a guy in the United States that goes around and looks for the latest, coolest new shit to try to present to the Japan market. And so when we presented them with the power station, they went, "Oh yeah, we're going to send over our guy over there to check it out, and you can loan him one, and he's going to play with it, he's going to give us some feedback." And like, yeah, we've been with you for 30 years, but if you want to send your guy over to verify if this product is a real product, yeah, great, go ahead, send him over. And so the guy calls me up and he says, "Yeah, I'm going to come over on Tuesday. Do you mind if I bring somebody with me?" And I said, "Hey, bring your grandmother. I don't care." And So he comes over, and he comes with Joe, and we're just the day that we came over was the first day that we had an operational, functional prototype of the GPDI, the GPDI desktop recording amp.
Oh man.
And so the guy's name is Andrew. So Andrew comes in
Andrew
and he goes,
Campbell, who's
"Oh, this is interesting. Yeah." And Joe's going, "Can I plug into it?" So yeah. Andrew was like going, "Yeah, well, tell me about it." And Joe's like going, "Let me plug in. Let me." So we plug Joe in, and he plays like 5 notes, and he goes, "Holy fuck!" He just starts losing his mind. So we pulled out an iPhone and pointed at him and said, "Just keep playing." And he goes, "Okay, well, what should I do?" "Just keep playing." He goes, "Well, shouldn't I tell people who I am?" And
oh, that was a later time. That was with
and I said, "Just tell them who the fuck you are."
No, I think you're remembering when Paul was pointing a camera at me.
Well, I think it was about
Anyway.
the same time.
The thing was that
The thing was the excitement where there was this electricity in the air.
yeah, and we learned, oh shit, we're the same kind of nerd.
We're the same kind of nerd.
We're the same kind.
And Joe says, "Well, what should I say?" "Just tell them who the fuck you are." And so
No,
he goes,
I remember that. Paul went, "Dude, who the fuck are you?"
"Oh, yeah."
And I was like, "Who the fuck am I? I don't know."
He said, "I don't know. I'm Joe Gamble."
Yeah.
So we told him, "I don't know who the fuck I am. I'm Joe Gamble." And he proceeds to just fucking shred through this brand new prototype of a 1-watt amp plugged into a cab, and he's going, "Holy fuck!
I do
My
what I
whole world
do."
has just been ripped. What the hell is this?"
Like, here's the funny thing, like shred, like, dude, Ziegler and Simon on here, like, I could never, like, I'm happy with myself as a guitar player. I actually like myself. I like what I play, but I can't play what you guys play, man. You guys, like, your fast twitch fibers and shit, like, Simon, I really want to hear more of what you do on your own. Like, you nail Edward Van Halen, like, it's just to a sickening degree. You nail his tone, his touch, his playing. Like, it's freaky what you can do. I can't do that. And Ziegler, like, brother, I mean, like, I've told you this 100 times in person. Like, your nervous system, I know it's kind of broken right now, but I think you're gonna fix it, and I better.
And by the way, I was a huge Pygmy Love Circus fan before you joined the band, and after you joined the band, it was even better. So, just come back.
John is such a sick guitar player. Like, here's the funny thing. Like, I'm talking about your chops, John. Like, his chops. Like, literally, like Sean Lane is the sickest guitar player to ever live, and John's like speed can kind of rival that. Like, he's got that thing. But if you strip that all away, another thing that John does, like, he'll like sit back and do his Billy Gibbons shit.
Well, not only
And
that,
he can
he'll
do
do
that
he'll
too.
do that shit, but they'll be playing Godzilla by Blue Oyster Cult,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I heard
make
you
it
play
sound
Godzilla.
like it's got some cred. Like,
By the way,
wait a minute.
so
This is progressive rock music. It's Godzilla. No, but it's real progressive. Let me show you. And then he just fucking schools you on progressive while playing Godzilla. It's
So I
just-
actually played a
disgusting.
string of gigs with Joe Bouchard, who's the original bass player of Blue Oyster Cult. And it was funny because this was a band that I had in Denver. And we got this call that said, "Hey, what do you think of opening up for Joe Bouchard from Blue Oyster Cult?" It was like, "Yeah, that sounds good." They said, "Hey," and then we got a call later. It was like, "Hey, what would you think of backing up Joe Bouchard on his own songs?" It was like, "Yeah, that sounds cool." Then we got another call. It was like, "What would you think of actually doing Blue Oyster Cult songs with Joe Bouchard. It's like, bring that shit on.
Yeah.
So we did a tribute to Blue Oyster Cult with Joe Bouchard, and we played all of that shit. We were playing, oh man, I'm gonna forget it. It was all the awesome early Blue Oyster Cult stuff. So I got to play all the Buck Dharma shit. Awesome music, man, with Joe. And it's funny because when we would play, we did, I think, 5 gigs. It was kind of like a mini tour. And we would do Don't Fear the Reaper. And when we do it, we'd bring somebody up from the audience, because this was after Christopher Walken. We'd be like, we'll bring some random
Dude to play cowbell?
Nobody could find the pulse. And you're even with a big loud. Actually, I was using a 68 Super Reverb. We're just fucking loud, and we're super loud, and still like a cowbell will like sit over all of that stuff. And they moved back to Denver a few years ago. Oh, that's interesting. Anyway, yeah, we could never get anyone to keep time playing on Don't Fear the Reaper. It'd be like, holy shit, trying to block that stuff out. It was nasty.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, man. Thank you.
We're getting called to go to rehab.
Yeah, we are. It's 3 hours and 70 minutes.
This has been.
I feel like it's been 20 minutes.
This has been such a blast, and now I'm glad that we've totally explained to you the importance of reforming capacitors and amplifiers. And I know that you don't have a fucking clue what we're talking about anymore, because that was so long ago that it doesn't matter anymore. And great. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
Take your goddamn amp alone, send it to a qualified tech, and a real qualified tech, somebody that really knows what they're doing, not some guy that will only work on 55 Chevs because that's all he's qualified to work on. And if you have any questions, you can contact us and stuff. But
yeah,
this,
but I wanted to say, you know, John, I know like having a stroke, like I have no idea what that's like, brother. And I just want you to come back from that, because you're an amazing guitar player, whether your hands are working right now or not. I know who you are. Those of you who have heard you play know who you are. And I wanted to thank you for, you know, the kindness that you showed me, certainly, when I got to town and over the years. You're just such a brother. And we all want to see you back.
Absolutely.
Playing the way that we know that you play, because you're just a motherfucker, man. And Simon, thanks for saying what you said about me. I really appreciate that. And I know a ton of people on this thread are amazing players too. And
Amanda, yeah, you're right. It was wicked awesome from our side too. We've been having such a blast.
Yeah.
And
Amanda
I've
needs to
discovered
come on
something.
this show with us.
You should. I've discovered something. This show is much more fun when we've got an active bar running the whole time. It's so much more fun.
Yeah.
And Nico
You're welcome, John, and thank you, brother.
Nico-chan has made it totally happen.
Yay! I'm drunk, and I enjoyed getting there because of you.
Nico-chan, tell us something about. Give us an update about what you're doing.
What am I doing?
What are you doing?
Well, just trying to telling you guys it's over 3 hours.
But I don't care. Like, people are still here.
You guys are drunk, drunk.
But they might be drunk with us.
Well, we all drunk.
I'm happy. I can keep talking. I don't need to get off right now.
Happy is good. Okay.
I thought I would do more college homework when I got home.
By the
but
way,
I don't care.
Whoever went to name.
Sorry.
Sorry for that.
Good luck, whatever.
Good luck, whatever.
Poor forgotten souls.
We don't miss it. We don't regret. So.
We've done Nan for 30 years.
Yeah.
And it's time. thank you for your support over all these years. It's time for the whole industry to morph. And
We'll be back, and then maybe.
Will you?
What?
Will you? You think you'll go back?
it's going to be a whole new thing.
Well,
If it's going to survive, it's going to be a whole new thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe next year, or maybe next. Well,
You know what, man? Like the last time I was at Namm, it was like the Friat crew were just amazing human beings. Like I remember sitting together going,
It's not
I
worth
love
doing.
all of these people.
It's not worth doing unless the people are worth hanging out with. It's just not.
But who? It was like, it was Ito and
Evan
Evan
and David Torn
and David Torn and Laura Schooler
and Laura was great and Neil
and Neil, and like it was just like everybody in this booth is like the coolest people on the planet. I would hang out with any of them 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know? And like, and we're representing, like, I'm licking your boots, the coolest products on the fucking planet.
which wouldn't exist without a team like that.
Nico Sean's laughing at me because she doesn't like it when I lick his
No,
boots.
it's okay. But it's gonna start over again.
We're not.
I
No.
know you guys are closing. Who's in the
We're
hall?
getting-
I've had two amazing martinis, and we're gonna sign off. And I'm so happy for all the people that hung out with this. And what we're gonna do when we sign off is we're gonna switch from martinis to gimlets,
What? Something's showing on the screen.
and also we've got some amazing curry waiting
I've
for
been
us
smelling it
in the kitchen.
entire time.
For the last half hour, we've been going, we got to cut this off because there's some killer curry happening in the kitchen. So we're going to go hit some curry.
So here's the thing, like I'm on this super calorie cut right now. I'm on 1,550 calories a day because this is just my thing. But I thought, like, oh man, I'm headed over to Steve and Erico's. Like,
Right.
that's a problem because Erico always cooks at the end of these shows. And I'm like, all right, this is gonna be my cheat meal for the week. And then I walked in, I'm like, Erico, this smells amazing. So I can't wait to get down on this. This is my cheat meal.
Okay. All right.
All right, are we ready?
So, not
We
quite,
done?
not
Oh,
quite.
Okay.
Before you sign us out officially, we're going to sign out with this, and then Joe's going to sign us
Play
out
the thing.
officially. Love you guys. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you, Amanda, for hanging out. Bring more of your friends, Amanda, because
Yeah, thanks for
if
coming,
they're anything
guys.
like you,
Thanks for coming in.
then they're an important part of our group, and we need more of that.
And if you guys have asked questions and we haven't grabbed them,
Just put 'em in the
it's
comments.
Not because we meant to, it's because we're drunk. And I'm slow right now. Are you going to play a little bit?
Yep.